the City Council meeting of Monday, May 17, 2021. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Albertson,
Here.
Bueller,
Here.
Hoyer,
Here.
Moline,
Here.
Lallam,
Here.
Manti,
Here.
Rademski,
Here.
Roby,
Here.
Biddlehauer,
Here.
Y.
Present.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion by Bueller and a second by Rademski.
I would like us to move 4F to the regular agenda. It's a pretty high dollar amount, probably be a slam dunk anyway, but I would like to have a little bit of discussion on that.
Okay, item F, 4F, move that to the regular agenda. Councilman Bueller, are you okay with that?
Yes.
And Councilman Rademski?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. I'm going to put that on the end. So, let's see. All right. The next item on the agenda is the public comments, and this is the time reserved for anyone who would like to make a public comment to step forward and do so. We do have a sign-up sheet for in-person comments and a policy for everyone. If anyone wishes to speak, please say permission to speak if you're online, and I have the sign-up sheet. If your comments relate to an agenda item, though, please wait for the agenda item. But if you're here just to speak in the open about any topic, this is your time. And I'm looking at these. I see Dan Sire, and yours is not an agenda item? Oh, okay. That's which agenda item was it?
About the airport.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, everybody else on the list looks like they're here for an agenda item. Is there anyone online that wishes to speak? Please say permission to speak. Hearing no one, we will go on to approval of the agenda, and I have some changes here. I'm going to move item P, which is the discussion of ICAP and 60s plus dining. I'm going to move that right to the top of the agenda. And then I'm going to move item R, which is the authorization to allocate funding for the park, to right after that. And then we'll go through with regular agenda. Is there a motion for that? So moved. Have a motion by Y and a second by Manti. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, item 7 is the regular agenda, and we will start with item P, which is discussion of ICAP 60s plus dining funding request of $145,245, $145,245.88 to furnish kitchen in the new Generations on First building. And before we make a motion on that, I know we have some folks that are here to talk about it, and if you'll please come forward and explain the situation, that will give us some room. And I guess I can give a little bit more introduction about the fact that the senior center building is owned by the city, leased to the senior citizens, and they sublease to ICAP 60s plus dining. So we have a project coming where there's an anticipated move of the Senior Citizen Center over to a new building which isn't done yet. And ICAP needs the kitchen. So we can't demolish the existing building until the new building is up and ready to go. And we're kind of in a pinch because there's no money set aside for kitchen facilities. So they don't want to have a gap in those services. So if you want to take it, one of you.
All right, good evening, council members and Mayor Karen. I'm Brenda Hanton, Connington County Commissioner. I am not here in that capacity tonight. I am here as ICAP board member and on the executive board. I would also like to introduce Mike Anderson, who is the program director for 60 Plus Dining, and Arlene Werhelm, who is the chief operating officer. So with that, I will turn that over to Mike to give a little introduction as to where we're at and how we got here and what, just fill you in with the information. Do you want to hand out the packets right away, maybe? We do
Yeah.
have some information for you that he can.
I do have 10 packets here right now, this information. And good evening, and thank you for allowing us to come and speak with you here tonight. I also want to say thank you to a lot of people who are here, especially the council members and the mayor. I have seen quite a few of your pictures in our Heroes delivering service. A lot of times March for Meals will do our Heroes picture section, talking about our local heroes, local members who come and help deliver our Meals on Wheels. And, you know, it is a really good program. Not only is it a good program, just the people that we serve and take care of. Over the last year, you know, we have served over 800 individuals, unique individuals in Watertown. We have served nearly 50,000 meals within the city limits of Watertown. This is to individuals who live here, individuals who have come to town from outside of Watertown. A lot of members, the Meals on Wheels that are delivered to their house. It's a very worthwhile program. It's something that we had a lot of challenges over this last year. COVID hit last year, and everybody's had challenges with COVID, but it was very unique, I think, to our program because the most vulnerable population that we have are the people that we actually serve. And so this happened right about the time when this whole project started getting going. Jesse Craig came to the senior center, had meetings with the seniors, and talked about how we had this great idea to build a new center downtown. And what a remarkable thing for the seniors of Watertown. What a remarkable thing for Watertown to have something they can be proud of and to serve seniors well into the future. This site that we've been at there for 41 years. It served the city well. It served the seniors very well. It was a great asset to the city. When you look at the volume of meals that we serve here every year and the people that we serve and the fact that our clients, they're not just clients, they're people. They're family members, they're neighbors. You know, I've seen the rosters. Some of these are some of my old, my parents' friends, 4-H leaders, 4-H friends, people that my folks used to shoot archery with, teachers. They're people I know, and I feel really proud to be part of that. This moving of the building or of the site does come with challenges for us, though. We don't have unlimited resources to just provide new equipment. And so when we take a look at this and we take a look at the move, we sat down with Jesse. Jesse hired a firm out of Sioux Falls called IS Services to design a kitchen for us. Kind of to lay out, they needed to know where our rough ends are going to need to be for the electrical and the plumbing and for the gas. So we sat down with those designers and kind of laid out what a kitchen plan should look like. Not only taking the experience that we have right now with the kitchen that we have. I use some of my experience as a restaurant owner for 30 years and their experience for designing kitchens, and tried to plan out what we would have going into the future and what we would need here in Watertown. We tried to look at the fact that there's going to be growth. Over the last 5 years, we've had 45% increase in meal services here in Watertown. Over 5 years, 45% increase. They talk about statistics that the age group that is 65 and older will double over the next 15 years. And that's something that we need to be prepared for and ready for. This plan that Jesse's put forward to build an apartment complex designated for senior living attached to this, what an asset for people to be able to move in and be able to hop on an elevator and come down and get a meal. Be able to hop on an elevator and come down and utilize the senior center. I think that will bring more people to town, people coming in to visit their friends who they haven't seen for years. What a great place to get together at. I think this is going to be a big asset for the city of Watertown. But looking at these plans, the first thing that we did is we had kind of a rough estimate put together from IS. What would we need for total equipment? Of course, the first bid that came in was over $460,000. Well, we knew that is an awful lot of money, more than I would probably spend on one of my restaurants. I've been in the restaurant business, and you look in there and say, okay, what in this is fluff? What don't we need? And so the first thing we did is we took those items out of that list. Then we took a look at the list and said, what items do we already have? Do we look at the senior center where we're at? Is there equipment there that we can bring over that makes sense to bring over? Because there's equipment that works that makes sense to bring over, and then there's equipment that works that does not make sense to bring over. Either it's going to be too costly, or the option that we've got refrigerators that are 20, 30 years old. We've got equipment that's with that age on it. Is it going to make the move? We've got a dishwasher that's 20-some years old. The amount of utilities that thing draws, and the fact that we can buy a new piece of equipment that's way more efficient, it's going to cost way less money to run, and is going to work. For example, a dishwasher, a new water heater or a new heating element on that dishwasher is around $2,500 to $3,500, and they go out about every 5 years. We replaced one about 3 years ago. Do we really want to use that piece of equipment in the new facility? So we looked at all of those things. We looked at the volume that we're doing, the fact that we are doing more frozen items than we've ever done, and in explaining that, I'll talk about that in a minute. To stay on track, sorry. We took a look at then like I said, the items that we can bring over. And then we took a look at items that we want rather than what we need. So there's items that we bid out that if we had the money, it would be nice to have, but we put them in a want list. So we separated this down to a needs list, and that needs list we put out for proposals. We contacted 3 different locations, businesses, asked for proposals. We did decide on one that brought in the best proposal. And that proposal with that limited list came to $247,000. So we went from 460 to 247. Now we've taken that 247, and rather than coming to the city or the community here and trying to raise all that money here, we felt it was our duty to go out and do our due diligence to try and raise that money outside to be able to bring it in here. And to date, we've been able to, we believe, raise about $102,000 in grants. All of this money that we have so far, we don't have 100% allocated, but we have verbal agreements with the groups that would provide this. That leaves us right now with a shortfall of $145,000. One of the things that we're up against right now is the fact that all equipment, just like everything else, whether you're building a home or you're buying a refrigerator from Carl's TV, all of our equipment right now is looking at anywhere from 10 to 12 weeks out to delivery. So we have to be planning ahead. We can't wait until the month before to order it, or we're going to be sitting there without equipment, without being able to operate. The other thing that we're up against, just like building a home or anything else, is massive price increases. We've been told by our restaurant suppliers that we are looking at one of the largest price increases they've ever had in their history. They're looking at 7 to 9% across the board, and it is coming very soon. So they're saying if we don't order this equipment soon, we're going to be looking at 7 to 9%, or roughly $20,000 some just in price increases. We're going to need a small grant just to cover the price increases. So we want to act soon. That's very important. You know, as far as the time frame that we've had, you know, to work on this and trying to do our due diligence for the city, this is where we're at. We would like to ask the city basically to grant us an amount of money that you feel comfortable doing, up to that $145,245.88. If you do grant us funds for this, I can tell you that we will continue to do our due diligence to go out and try to procure more grants. And we have some that we're looking at right now that we are still trying to get. The problem is the time. If we're able to procure more grants, it will reduce our ask, or we'll be able to lower that amount when we do get that. The problem, again, is we need to order this equipment now. If we don't, we're not going to have it in August. We're going to be pushing this project back to September, October, November, and paying a higher price for the equipment that we need. So.
Right. I see the dilemma. Council members, anybody want to make a comment? I think the HVAC part of it needs to be pointed out, that, you know, it's one thing to carry an old refrigerator over and plug it in and use it. The HVAC, really, you can't do that. That's heating and cooling the whole room, in addition to being the hood for the stove.
Correct.
You can't take one from one building and put it in another building.
There are a lot of things that, while they were fine 41 years ago, and while inspectors that come in just go, okay, right now, it's not okay in new construction. We have codes that we have to meet. When you put in a hood system for a new restaurant or any new kitchen facility, you have to have makeup air. That's code. And I may have the exact percentage not correct here, but I believe it's about 90% makeup air that you have to bring into a building from what you're taking out. And the reason that is because as you create a negative vacuum, you're actually sucking. We're actually sucking water out of drain traps. We're actually blowing out pilot lights and different things, and so you're forced to do that. Now, when you're bringing in makeup air, if we were in California, it'd be great because it's 70-some degrees all the time. But here, we have 10 below, 20 below winters, and we have 90 to 100-degree summers. We don't have that many 70-degree days. So we have to be able to heat that air, and we have to be able to cool that air. In fact, this is the main heating and cooling that we have for the facility. Now, this makeup air unit is the most expensive piece of equipment that we need for this facility, and it's right around $50,000.
Okay. And that's probably the most critical need then.
It is. Without a hood system, we can't operate. Mm-hmm. We literally can't turn a stove on. We can't. It doesn't matter what we bring in there. Without a hood system, we cannot operate.
Councilman Albertson?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, I just have a question. You mentioned the restaurant design equipment and so on. Mm-hmm. This is all specific to restaurants, so you really can't come local and buy this equipment. So, you know, I noticed this is out of Sioux Falls, and we have lots and lots of business people in Watertown who would love to have $250,000 put into our economy and their economy. Right. Is this stuff possible to buy here, or?
So one of the people that was approached, or one of the businesses that was approached, is Maxwell's Hotel Supply here out of Watertown. They're based out of Sioux Falls and Watertown. They're a hotel restaurant supplier. They were one of the people that put in that we did ask for a proposal for. Unfortunately, due to I don't know whether it was the timing or whatever. They tried to get something together, but they did decline to put in a proposal for it. And you know, this is something that we went to them and IS, and we had other online proposals for this. We did go to them over a year ago and tried to work them into this. And when we did the proposal, it just happened that they were that busy that they just didn't have the time to do it, or just was unable to at the time. So it's not due to our lack of trying to keep that here.
And just to note, this is commercial restaurant equipment, so it wouldn't be available at your regular appliance store.
Correct.
Councilman Roby?
Thank you, Mayor. When you were planning the move, how did you budget for this originally?
We didn't really know we were going to move until all of a sudden it came up. And we've been working on items ever since. First, we had heard that Jesse was going to help buy some equipment, but evidently that was misunderstood, so.
You know, this project started quite a while ago, but then it seemed to stop when COVID hit. And to be honest with you, we had no indication that it was going to go through. In fact, it was kind of a maybe thing at that time. So for us to budget for it at that time, we don't have funds that we can just, or income that we can just put away for this. In fact, at the same time when this happened and this was stopped, that's when COVID hit. And I have to say, when COVID hit, one of the first things that we did is we had to say, how are we going to take care of our people? We didn't go out and solicit grants from anybody. We didn't go out and look for things. The first thing we did is we called a meeting we have a kitchen here in Watertown, we have a kitchen in Brookings, we got a kitchen in Madison. We knew that there was going to be problems. We knew a lot of our caterers that we work with in all these other towns, we knew that they were going to be shutting down. We knew that our congregate site here in Watertown would probably be closed because of COVID, and the same in Brookings, and we knew that we had to do something. We knew that we may not have volunteers. We didn't know how that was going to go. How would we deliver food safely to our seniors? The first thing we did is went out and bought here in Watertown, we went and bought 200 coolers to put out in front of their doors so we could put meals inside their coolers so we didn't have to have that upfront close handoff of the meal, because we knew we needed to keep that safe distance. That was an expense. We knew that we had to have more coolers and freezers because a lot of our congregate people were going to be eating at home. We also knew that a lot of our congregate people would be too proud to eat at home and get a home delivered meal. We knew that we had to come up with something different, so we started a frozen meal program. Our staff put in overtime hours, extra hours. We put out in Watertown 14,000 frozen meals over the last 12 months. And that's to seniors coming and getting meals because they didn't want to come into the congregate, but they knew they had to eat and they needed a way to take care of it. So that's where our budget went. That's where our first priority went, especially when this project was kind of in limbo. I mean, this is the people is who we needed to take care of.
Right, Councilman Vilhauer?
First of all, I want to say kudos to your operation. My wife and I have delivered Meals on Wheels for a long time, and great operation, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be able to do that. Also, I see Jesse Craig's in the corner there. I want to compliment you on the overall plan for the building that we're looking at. So a lot of good things happening here. A few questions though. If we were to help out the equipment, that equipment is owned then by ICAP, correct?
Correct.
Now, you said that equipment, I heard 41 years old in some cases. I mean, you would have been replacing that at some point in the future, wouldn't have you?
Yeah, at some point in the future, yeah.
And that would have been your dollars that would have paid for that, I'm assuming?
We would have had to have received a grant. It's not that we have dollars generally to do that. We would have to go out and receive a grant, and we generally do that on occasion. The state will offer a grant, or for example, in one of these proposals, we applied for a Meals on Wheels grant, or we apply for a Watertown community grant. So we have replaced equipment in the past, and we've done it generally with these grants. One of the toughest questions that I was faced when we started this is, is your equipment that you have right now outdated, and does it need to be replaced? Is it that bad? And I hate to say it, but a lot of this equipment is in really good shape because we've taken care of it. We've got a great staff there. They work very hard. They keep it clean. We repair it and repair it and repair it. But Does it need to be replaced where it's at today? No. Not everything needs to be replaced today. Does that hood need to be replaced today? No. Does it meet code? No. But no one's forcing us to replace it. Now, if we move into a new center, we have to replace it. It has to be replaced. It has to meet code. So that's kind of where we're at with some of that. You know, we've got 3-door freezers and fridges that are 20-some years old. Do they have to be replaced right now today where they're sitting? Well, right now they're working. 6 months ago, I had to have a repair person there working on it. Will it make the trip? I don't know. I truly believe if we're planning for the future, and I hear some talk earlier about doing things right. If we're going to do something, do it right. If we're planning for the future and we're going to do this right, I don't want to take over 7 or 8 plug-in freezers and make a big line and line them up against the wall and use that kind of utility and repair cost. We need to put in a walk-in cooler and freezer.
Have the floor yet, please, Mayor?
Sure.
And in speaking to Brenda Hatton this afternoon, it sounds like you've pretty well tapped out, and I guess I'm looking at you, Brenda, from our conversation, pretty well tapped out other options as far as funding for this. Is that a fair statement, Brenda?
There's one more.
Yep.
I'm gonna put 50 grand in for the makeup air. So that'll bring it down to 95 ask from the city.
Oh,
Okay.
well,
Very nice.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
well, can I throw a suggestion out for council consideration? I haven't talked to our finance officer about this. I would propose, okay, let me ask this, would a loan help out? I mean, I'd be prepared to make a motion as a council representative, a loan, a grant of $50,000, and then a favorable interest or favorable term loan of $50,000 or 45, whatever the figure is. Would that be something that would be appeal or work for you folks?
A loan for us is much harder because we are reimbursed per meal that we serve, and they normally don't allow us to build in equipment money. We have to find that elsewhere, generally, unless they have a special equipment. We have gone, like Mike said, to the foundation. Like if we need one piece or so, it's a lot easier. It's when we're doing a whole kitchen like this that it gets difficult.
So a loan is not an option? I mean,
You know, I'd have to go back and check the regulations. I'm not sure we can pay the interest out of the grant.
We can play interest on it.
Because some of the grants allow interest and a lot of them do not.
Okay. I mean, going to a bank, going to a bank, for example, and trying to take out a loan isn't,
That would not be an option for us. We would have to use some of the other equipment. And we also would go to some of the local banks that we've had good support with and ask for a donation from them before we would take a loan.
okay.
There are a few things that we're not allowed to do with state and federal funds. And then a portion of every dollar that we receive or that we spend comes from the state and federal funds through the OAA Act, the Older Americans Act. And so I do believe also that we're not allowed to pay interest. It's one of the non-reimbursable expenses that they don't allow us to pay interest. They also don't allow us to pay for any building, actual structural building expense either. It's not
I mean,
allowed.
let's just say hypothetically, we would make a no-interest loan.
You know, that's something we'd have to go back and check with the fiscal department to make sure. I know the interest would be a problem. I don't know, depending on how much the payment would be each year, if there'd be funds to do that or not.
Well, I'm just throwing
But we
this
could
out
check into that.
without, contacting any of you or a finance officer, but I'd like to be able to do something to help out the cause here.
Glenn, just to answer your question, also,
Oh.
at this time, as far as the funding, they've tapped out, but we will continue to try and reach out to other entities and try to receive funding, but at this point.
And as Mike kind of alluded to also, if I can add one more thing, we did apply to the state for the whole grant. They told us we were only allowed $52,500, but if they changed their mind and could figure out to use their COVID money, then we would take their money. And if you guys did, like Mike said, if you did give us some funds, we would get the equipment ordered. But if that came in, we would pay you back because we would use their funds before anybody else's.
Counselor Manty?
That kind of brings me to what I was going to suggest was if we were to offer the amount you need, which is now about 95,000, with the idea that that would be a cap, and that if any money was you received additional money, that could come back to us then.
Yes.
That was what my suggestion was going to be after hearing the interest problem. Is that?
Oh, I was just gonna echo with that too. I mean, if that sets you guys up so that you can make the purchase, you know, before prices spike, because I've also heard some industry rumblings that things will spike potentially. You know, if we can facilitate that, and with the understanding, you know, that that's essentially a zero interest loan, so that we can at least get you moving, and then if we kick in some, as Councilman Vilhauer mentioned, that would be great too, and then make up the rest with 0% interest. I mean, I'm pretty on board with that. You guys provide a very important service.
Counselor Y?
Thank you, Mayor. I think one thing we need to consider here in this information that we got here, it does not include tables and chairs. So if we do fund this, are we going to ask the seniors to sit on the floor?
No, I think they have, tables and chairs are very portable, and they're old, the ones they have. They'd like to have new ones, I'm sure.
I mean,
But-
will,
We've had conversations with the Watertown Foundation and as well, and we've also had conversations with the senior center and the senior leadership. One thing that we would like to do is maybe work with the Watertown Foundation and as far as trying to procure some of the tables and chairs for the new facility as well, on their behalf and ours.
Counselor Rademski?
A couple things come to mind here. This is already a project that is moving forward. So there's two ways to view this. It's kind of like almost a change order. Now, if this was a project the city was doing and there was a change order attached to it, and we've seen change orders for quite substantial amounts of money, there'd be about a 5-minute discussion on it, and then we would approve the change order. And one of the things one of the gals told me when I was out getting my petition signed was, she said, do not forget about the old people in this community. I mean, we ask these people to shop local, we ask them to pay taxes, and we also, you know, they pay property tax, they pay their fair share, and they've chose this community to retire in. Now, I don't think we should let $95,000 stand in the way of completing a project. I would like to see us fund the full amount of the $95,000.
Thank you. I think you mentioned me in your statistic about the 45% growth in the senior population in the next, that's all of us someday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Councilman Y?
thank you, Mayor. Jason, is that a motion? And if it is, I would second that.
I'd like to make that motion to fund the full $95,000.
Okay, we have a motion by Rademski and a second by Y. Further discussion, council? Council Roby?
Kristen, if that were to pass through, where does it come from?
If this is the motion and it's approved by the full council, then my suggestion is it's coming out of the general fund. What this is it's not our improvement, so capital improvement fund use is not appropriate. It would have to come from the general fund unreserved fund balance. And I would have to bring it back as a budget supplement.
Councilman Villar?
Kristen, could it not come out of our contingency that we budget every year? The 300,000 that, or don't you recommend that?
It could. I would say normally in the past, we would not use our contingency to do a donation or like a contribution to an external organization. We've used our contingency in the past for overages in equipment or unbudgeted stuff that is kind of more related to the city. So I guess either way, the budget is getting supplemented.
Understood.
Yeah, with this action, I would bring that at a later date, but this would give me the authority to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Y?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, one more question, Mike or Arlene. This equipment then would obviously become property of ICAP. Does the community have the opportunity to use this? Maybe the senior center wants to do a chili feed or a spaghetti night, or is this 100% ICAP use only?
So what we've, discussions that we've had with the seniors is we would like to see the kitchen set up as a secure area, that we would have maybe a locking gate. I know we haven't figured that in, but we would have some sort of a locking gate to lock it up, and then have a set of keys with the senior, the president and that board, so that they could use that when they needed to, and that wouldn't be a problem. You know, we'll have our dishwasher in there and stoves and stuff like that they would be able to come in and use. They will have a little kitchenette area that they can use with a stove and a fridge outside, but if they're able to come in and use our equipment if they needed to, and I'm sure one of our staff, if they ever needed to, would assist them with that as well.
All right, any other discussion?
Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Jason, can you verify just for the minutes? I want to make sure I have the exact amount that you were looking at doing.
95,000.
Okay. That wouldn't be quite the full. I know with the donation from Jesse, it's a little bit short. I don't know if they're okay with that.
What do you need?
$245.88.
Yeah.
And Jesse said he can throw it in there. We get the round number. He gets the change.
Okay, 95,000. Thank you.
All right. Everyone ready? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thank
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
I'd also like to say thank you to Jesse. You know, this project, what's going on down there, is a model for what can happen all over the state of South Dakota. And I think Watertown can be a model for that, not only with the senior center, but the economic development that we're doing here. But thank you very much, and thank Jesse.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All righty. Good deal. Okay. We're moving on to item R, which is authorization to allocate funding for the Watertown Foundation Plaza project, project number 2030, supplementing the 2021 budget in the amount of $1,005,000 for a total project amount of $3,005,000. I have a motion by Hoyer and a second by Manti, and I'll ask the Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye, to give us a start on this.
Thank you, Mayor. I gave an extensive background in the prior meeting. I'll give an abbreviated version of that here for this meeting. But where we're at with the downtown park, otherwise known as the Foundation Plaza, is that, as everybody recalls, we've consulted with Confluence to perform the design and bidding services for the city in order to construct a downtown park. And that contract was entered into last August. We've progressed since then, formed a design committee. That committee's included several downtown business owners, developers, city staff, city council members, and a great group of community members that's given a well-rounded perspective on what we feel is needed for this downtown park to be a success for the community. Where we've gotten to today with all the design components as the design has progressed is that we've run into budget constraints. And the options laid out by Confluence, there's essentially three of them. The one that the committee feels is the most desirable in order for this park to get the utmost use out of it on a year-round basis is a design concept that includes an ice feature for the winter months and also some turf for the summer months, which makes it obviously all the more easy to maintain for the Park and Rec Department. And the other benefits that brings that you also see a lot of other communities, downtown parks, utilizing as a feature. With those two particular components and all the other amenities that are being proposed, such as a stage, which is kind of the focal point of the park, and some of the playground equipment, the total current estimate is just over $3 million. Of course, that set off some alarms and some cause for pause for a very temporary basis here to run this through council now. Reason being is we're sitting on a $2 million budget. So we wanted to have this conversation. There are several design committee members here, several stakeholders with this park represented here today. And shy of me rambling on any further, I'll hit pause myself and let the discussions commence. But we did talk in the previous meeting about some funding options, some alternatives, whether it looked like getting some private donations for the park, city funding the additional $1 million, likely from staff's recommendation would have to come from the 22 CIP budget process, or some hybrid combination of those two components. Those are just three simple options, but to get the conversation started. And I'll leave it at that and stand by for any questions.
Right, thank you. And the key point is here we're at the point where a decision needs to be made to instruct our consultant how to proceed with the project. So are we going for all the amenities that the committee wants to see and do it right, do it in full? Or are we going to start cutting? And so hopefully we'll arrive at a decision by the end of the meeting. And I know there are a number of people that would like to speak, and I see County Fair has a bunch of people, 5 people. Do you want to have one person come? You can come up. You need to say your name into the microphone for the record.
I'm Tyler Thuringer with County Fair Foods. I guess from our standpoint, Watertown has wanted to do something downtown for many years, and the option to do it the right way or to start cutting something right now, I think is just a little bit the wrong direction. I think if you're going to do it right, you need to do it full force and go with it with the right attitude. I guess that's really all our input is, but cutting the budget right now doesn't seem like the right option for anybody. There's been a lot of time, a lot of waiting. COVID has interrupted a lot of things for a lot of people, and I think the right way is to just go ahead and do it with the full budget.
Right, thank you. I would add, building on that, there was a decision made based upon the fact of moving forward with a park. Probably multiple decisions were made based upon the fact of moving forward with a park. We have Parkside Plaza, or excuse me, Parkside Place, a building under construction right now with many times again, the budget amount for this park has been invested in our community for that project, and we have businesses committing to going in there, and it will be mixed-use housing, and they were relying on the fact that we're building a park there. And so it you know, what we do for a park is the question. Do we build a park? I think that ship has sailed. But what we do as a park is the decision that needs to be made. Does anyone else want to come and speak? I have a few names of maybes. And if you didn't sign up, that's okay. State your name for the record, sir.
Liam Culhane. I wear a couple of different hats. Today here, I'm just present as a business owner and somebody that really cares about our city. The first thing, I'll keep it real brief. I emailed some of you folks with some of my thoughts. We all owe you as a council and city staff, new and old council, mayor, you've done a great service for the downtown. You've kept a tremendous focus on that, on our downtown, and it's yielded dividends. Things are going well. The businesses are thriving. The storefronts are open. We, you know, even in light of all of the challenge that we faced in the last year, just couple of nights ago after LATI graduation, it was incredible. There was people all the way up and down the streets, from Dempsey's all the way to the Opera House and back. It was really something special to see. I only say that because we have tremendous momentum, and this park is really the culmination of that momentum. The momentum of Charette, the H2O 2020 process, and then a tremendous amount of public focus and private stakeholders, private nonprofits, but also business owners and building owners. And so please don't let up off the gas. This is the time to really let it let it fly. And I know it's a challenge. I know money's always a challenge, right? But let's do it right, do it once. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Julie Knudsen from the Watertown Convention and Visitors Bureau. I did just a little bit of research just to see if I had anything comparable to what maybe the activity at the park could maybe bring to the downtown in dollars and cents. And what I have is just, it's from Winter Wonderland, so it's a similar local type of thing, an activity that went on for about 4 weeks. The amount of people that came through Winter Wonderland, assuming that they had 3 people in each car, and they spent an average of $65. They were from out of town, so they came to town to do Winter Wonderland. And in 2017, in those 4 weeks, they left $270,000 in our stores and our businesses. 2018 was actually more than that, $280,000. So that's just an example of what the downtown park can do for not only the downtown businesses, but the businesses all over Watertown. So visitors and locals alike, you know, when people are out and they're having fun, they're going to go downtown and eat. They're not going to go home and have goulash. They're probably going to go have a cup of coffee or something. So just getting people out to gather is a great thing for our community. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman Roby.
What's wrong with goulash? I won't repeat many of the reasons why I support a park, because they've already been said. I would add to it this, that I happened to be in another South Dakota city the other day, and I was talking about the transformation of downtown, and I got just some big eyeballs staring back at me. So the amount of transition we've gone through, it has been phenomenal, and I'm spending more time downtown. The other thing I wanted to point out that hasn't been brought up, though, is every neighborhood we put in has a park. And downtown is changed to the point that we now have, 150 units going up in downtown of all ages. And I think a park fits into that. This is now another neighborhood where that park fits into our strategy of having parkland for residences. Where I live, we run our kids down to Harper Park, okay? So people that live downtown now, they're gonna run them to Foundation Park. So I'm a big fan of the park, a big fan of downtown. I knew the costs were gonna go up at some point. That last $500,000 kind of made me hitch a little bit. I don't want to do it or shortchange the project. It'd be nice, depending on how it all rolled out, if some of that could get moved into next year. Now, that's easy for me to say because I won't be on the council next year. But, you know, the budget here, it always seems to be getting kind of tight. I think if there's a strategy we can implement to see how this rolls out, we may not be able to get it all done before the snow flies this year. If we can, then we're going to have to find a way to see if we can. I'm not sure where it's going to come from, but we're going to have to dig.
Thank you.
Councilor Roby, this is John Jacobson. I would add to the schedule conversation based on what Heath was saying is we fully expect to be building a lot of this plaza next year in 2022. And that honestly just has to do with the staging of the adjacent redevelopment and Jesse's construction needs that he's going to need for access to that site. So there's a certain amount of delay in letting that project get out of the ground first, and then the plaza project follows that up.
Thank you. That's a good point. I'd see that our Economic Development Director, Mark Vox, has his hand up. Mark, do you want to make a comment?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. I apologize for the background noise, so I'll be brief. Business retention, business attraction, talent attraction, and talent retention all go hand in hand, and this project will pay for itself in dividends. It all comes to quality of life, and people are now choosing the community they live in as compared to they used to choose the community where they got the job. We're in competition with communities across South Dakota to keep our people, keep our businesses, and to attract new people and new businesses. Mitchell has done this, Aberdeen has done this. Many other communities across the upper Midwest are doing downtown amenities like this. We strongly encourage you to consider this, and this will continue to help build on the momentum that all of you prior to my arrival have worked so hard to make Watertown and continue developing the community that we all want. I'll go back to Butte and I'll stay on and be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Councilman Vilhauer?
Couple questions. First of all, for the committee, whoever wants to speak to it. You know, we have this conversation every time we build something new, and that's the ongoing maintenance of it. I mean, has there been any discussion as far as, or trying to put a dollar amount to the O&M cost? And if so, is there a big difference between a $2 million park and a $3 million park as far as ongoing annual expenses? Any comments along those lines?
Sorry, I'm just looking if Confluence wants to take it. I
Yes.
can speak. Yeah, there you go.
I certainly can. We have had discussions about that very thing, Councilman Vilhauer. The important fact there is obviously the ice rink itself is a $500,000 addition, about 25% of our budget. So whether that's in or out, that's obviously going to affect the operations of the plaza. So that's a significant factor. I'm sure TK can add in a little bit as well to this discussion, but it's been very much in our conversations.
Okay. TK, do you have any comments to add?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my mouse to work here, Glenn. There we go. Yeah, John hit it on the head as far as the ice component. It will come with some O&M dollars. Based on our current rink, we still have the glycol, the refrigeration, the utilities. I can't give you that number. Staff-wise, it's not it's an indirect expense because they're salaried employees. But we've got to realize we're going to take somebody daily that has to take care of that ice. It's not like our outdoor rinks where we randomly flood. This is required for daily maintenance with the resurfacer machine. We have a FF&E cost with that, roughly around $100,000 for a piece of machinery. Granted, it's got a lifespan of 25, 30 years, but I don't think the basis of a $3 million park to a $2 million has any real changes in cost other than the ice. We are going to send staff there daily, trash, lawn care, landscaping. You might save an hour or so based on square footage, but the ice is the big component, and I have not done the legwork. Glycol, refrigeration based on square footage. I can sure get you that number, but there will be a cost. We can't fool ourselves that there won't be, but I cannot give you a firm number at this point, Glenn.
Okay. Also, regardless of which route we go with this, we still have the issue with the senior citizens, the old senior citizens building. Something needs to be done with that, because that's not factored into these costs. Is that a fair statement?
I thought that was, yeah, that's covered.
Jesse's covering the demo.
I mean, have we totally resolved that? I guess I wasn't totally clear in my mind if we had.
Well,
Go ahead.
It came before council at one point to give a general sense. Council approved the conveyance of that land to Jesse, and Jesse was intending to bear the cost of tearing it down. We have not done that yet because essentially we're waiting on this design to get finalized so we know what the legal description is in order to convey it.
Okay, so that will take us off the hook then as far as any additional costs relative to that old facility.
Yeah, when the land gets conveyed to me, the building gets conveyed to me, and then I'm responsible for everything that sits on it.
Okay. I guess that's all for questions for now.
Councilman Albertson?
Thank you, Mayor. I think maybe what we should do is ask Kristen. So many things have changed since the 1st of August in Watertown in terms of available dollars even. because of the ice arena. We had a sales tax bond that has passed our council for $15 million that the community believed that we were doing the right thing. And to me, I think Kristen would be the one we should say, okay, can we find $1 million in our account right now that we can just go ahead and get this thing done right? Because a lot of things have changed, I think, since our discussion in August. So, Kristen, I would ask you, if we vote that to put that $1 million in tonight, can you write a check tomorrow?
Well, thank you, Dan. Okay, so I do have to, as the finance officer, I do have to say that when we take on projects outside of the budget process, it's a little bit more difficult. We budget based off of our anticipated revenues. We also have previous year's capital carryovers that happen. So I think the best thing that I can do is to kind of give a rundown quick of what the Fund 212 fund balance looks like as we sit today. Currently, we're at about $15.6 million of unreserved cash balance. $5 million of that is spoken for the airport project. That is going to be what we're averaging the city's contribution. A large amount of that is federal funding through a grant. $2 million of the unreserved was already established for the downtown park. So that leaves us right around the $8.6 million. We are carrying over $2.5 million from 2020. Those are all projects that did not get completed. The dollars have not been spent. So essentially, we will also have to take into account the funding of those projects. We also have, as 10th Avenue is going to be completed through the bond, as Dan mentioned, we did go out for a $7.5 million bond at this time. $2.5 million of that will come off any use of the unreserved fund balance because we will have bond revenue for that. But it still does leave us needing $2 million for current projects that were budgeted in 2021. So when I quickly kind of do the math, that leaves us at about $4 million that we're looking at. Now, obviously, we hope to put some more revenue back into that. I will say that our goal as a city has always been to carry about the 3 to 4 months funding in our unreserved fund balance. So if we kind of average that out, we should be around the $4 million. So without taking on an extra $1 million, we're sitting about where we want to be. That's part of the process we go through when we budget. Now, in terms of the million, if the council determines that they want to proceed, we want to increase the budget. Some benefit that we have from hearing that we probably won't be completing the whole project in 2021. We can proceed, but knowing that as we go into the 2022 budget, you've already established that $1 million is going to this project. So I think that's the big thing that I have to be clear on. It's not that it's a, no, you can't do it. It's here's where you're sitting. This is my caution of continuing to take out of the unreserved fund balance, because we also know that sometimes projects go over. We could have a project that we are doing as a city goes over budget. This is a $3 million park potentially, but we all know change orders happen. So that's why we like our unreserved fund balance. And that's why we've always maintained about that $4 million, which is our comfort zone, because we just don't always know what's going to happen. So to that point, that was a lot of numbers, probably a lot of rambling, but I think if the council determines that this is the route they want to go, I think with it probably not being completed until 2022, you could proceed, but no, going into our 2022 budget process, $1 million is already spoken for.
Thanks, Kristen. Now, the question that I would have, you said the last time we met that the state is going to issue us at least $3.7 million, and I want to call it CARES Act money, but I don't think that's what it is. But from the CARES Act funds, that we're still going to get $3.7 million, and we've already received 5.5. Help me with what's going to happen with that $3.7 million. Is that, any of that, can that be used for a project, or are we back to paying our firemen and policemen's salaries with that money, or what can that 3.7 million that we're anticipating be spent for?
I don't have the exact requirements in front of me. I know some of it was improvements. I know there was some, I think it said street, wastewater. It identified some of those. I can't remember all of them. The council at this time has not determined what those funds will be used for. The 5.5 million that we received from the CARES Act was placed into the general fund. We didn't anticipate already using 3 million of that when we did our 2021 budget. So that just kind of shows where we're sitting with that extra dollars that we received. Regardless probably of what the council determines the best use of that for, it is 3.7 million. I think if it goes into the capital improvement fund, whether it's offset doing some other improvements, whether that's street improvements, it still does free up some cash. So that's a further discussion for the council to have.
Mayor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The city attorney.
I was just going to provide a quick general statement. It's the American Rescue Plan, and it's much less restrictive than the CARES Act. So there's a broad spectrum of items that it can be used for. So I know CARES Act, we had to submit all sorts of documentation. This is going to be much more loose as far as what it can be used for. But there are restrictions. It's just much broader.
Thank you. Councilman Rademski.
My first question is for Kristen. How close are we to getting some of these loans we have out there paid off?
Which are you referring to, the recent one that we just did?
Yeah.
Okay. So that one is actually based off of the TIF revenue funding. So that it's still got about the 20 years on that loan. So we won't see the cash returning to the capital improvement fund until the TIF has exceeded its 20 years. Otherwise, we don't actually have any other loans. We have our bonds, which I can run down when those will all kind of come off, but those do impact the Fund 212. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones where we have to set aside the funding. We're required to make sure that that cash is spoken for before anything else is budgeted.
Okay. I guess the comment I'd like to make is, it seems like Watertown's got some good momentum going right now. We've got a lot of stuff going on, and with what we could hear the ice arena could potentially bring in, I guess, for me to cut corners on this project at this point in the game, I hearken it to the heartbreaking SDSU loss. Let's not kick the ball out of bounds now and then come up short at the end of the game. So I would like to see us move forward with the full amount and the full project. We've got some people that have gone out on a limb to invest their time and money and take a risk, and I want to give them the best, the best thing possible moving forward for this. And I think, with what we've got going on and the tax revenue we're going to see coming in, the benefits to this, I think it just only makes sense to keep moving forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hoyer?
I, of course, echo a lot of how you guys are feeling with it. Some of the things to keep in mind, the unique perspective from the Downtown Steering Committee with something like this, which, by the way, those are the folks that meet to kind of plan the events that happen in the downtown, since we don't currently have a downtown event coordinator. We planned St. Patrick's Day. Right now, we've got a committee going to get moving on a revitalization of Crazy Days, essentially, which we're going to take all of Chem, close it down, and bring back some old Watertown fun. Yeah, get crazy. I don't know that we'll call it Crazy Days. We're deciding. And we're going to start pushing a little harder on our Oktoberfest, too, in the fall. As we continue to build those events, we need the spaces to really maximize them. And, as you noticed there, that was spring, summer, fall. Right now, we kind of have our downtown Wonderland thing going. This, if we can get it to this point, takes that a step further, and we can start looking at it as it gives folks a place to go in the winter with their kids or just their family where they can do some outdoor skating. We could take it as far as having a peewee hockey game out in the middle of the plaza and watching that because it'd be adorable, number one. Number two, it's just, it's good use of the space, but it's building those quality of life things. And speaking as somebody in a young family, I mean, these are things that attract us to communities, are these spaces where we can gather, where you can see a show. It's funny because looking at the concept design that looks so similar to Sturgis's downtown plaza, they actually have one too, with the fireplace on the side. It's very similar in that concept photo. But when I was there for AT last year, they actually were having an event, and it was before the rally and stuff, and there was huge utilization of it. It was a lot of fun. Yankton has a splash pad, which, you know, I go down there once a month, and I see huge utilization of it. I mean, you see the same thing down in Deadwood's little green space that they have, and of course Rapid as well. But they're just really wonderful public amenities that don't have a high bar of entry, and everyone can utilize it. And I like the SDSU metaphor just because it's so relevant and still stinging. I'm an alumni. But it's one of those things where if we can figure it out and do this thing right from the start, then we're not dragging our feet on it later. And we can take this, and yes, we have the economic investment from a lot of folks. The 2 apartment complexes, mixed use on those. We're not adding new roads, we're taking one out. I think we can take it even further, but just think about those events that we're able to host in that space as well, and what that does for economic productivity in the downtown. It's a whole new thing to get nostalgic about in 30 years, remembering those winters you spend down there, or all the utilization of the park. But we have to have that vision to bring those things to fruition.
Thank you. I see we have someone that may want to speak. Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Yes, I'm Jan DeBerg with the Watertown Area Community Foundation. Thank you, Mayor Karen and council members, for having this discussion and for considering this. And I just want to follow up on what Michael was saying. A few months ago, we were having discussion at the steering committee about, you know, planning events in this plaza and how that would work and who would be responsible for that. So a couple of months ago, working with the Watertown Development Company, the Community Foundation awarded an additional $75,000 grant to the development company to have a downtown event coordinator, a downtown promoter in their office to help plan events in this plaza in order to really make it a year-round place. So I just wanted to let you know that that was happening. And if there are other questions for me about that, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? I see Park Director Terry Kelly's hand is up. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, just a real quick thing, Mayor. Probably John or Kristen, did that million or the 3 million, did that include FF&E? Glenn's question just made me kind of think of that additional cost. If we went with the ice, items like a resurfacer, skate rentals, concession equipment, or Kristen, would that be a separate budgeted item that would not be approved through the capital budget? So both of you, kind of, if you can touch on that for me.
Sure, I'll start before Kristen goes. I will say that the 3 million is what includes the construction cost. It does not include anything like a resurfacer or ice skates, anything like that.
Okay, but we do have like the benches, the trash cans, the...
Yes, and the rink walls and all that. Yeah, it's to get you a fully functioning rink. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, John.
All right. Any other input?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
To TK's point, I was waiting for somebody else to bring this up, so I'll use TK as the scapegoat here to add on to that. Not that this needs to at all change any decisions tonight, but definitely a factor. One of the lingering items we have to resolve yet is our leased space, or potential lease space from the Craig development side of things. Right now, we're penciled to have about 1,200 square feet for restrooms and storage space. To TK's point, though, this is something the committee talked about a while ago. It's likely we'll need more than that to satisfy the needs for the park. We're going to need more than 1,200 square feet of storage space if we have a resurfacing machine, for example, and or other amenities that are needed on the site. One of those solutions, of course, is by adding on to the leased space we would be obtaining from Craig Development on their side of things. Or we'd have to look at a myriad of other options to address those operational concerns down the road. So just wanted to plant that seed so that the council knew that'd be part of the discussions in the future as we move forward with the plan.
Councilman Hoyer?
I'd say first thing, best donation and easy to put your picture on is a Zamboni. Who doesn't want to donate a Zamboni? Two, could we look at even the option, since we do have public restrooms? I mean, can we have an out-based facility to store something like that? I don't know that we need to build that in necessarily with the storage space that Craig Development is offering. I think that's something that maybe we could house separately from that, just because I think that gives a little more fiscal control over something like that, but that's me. And a lot of this stuff on that level, I think is appropriate maybe for some fundraising, because again, I think a Zamboni, we can easily band together on that one.
Yeah. Baby Zamboni. Okay, any other comments? We do have a motion.
Do we have a motion for, which is it?
For the full amount. Hoyer and Menti.
Oh, that's us. Okay. Well, I just want to say that if anybody was here at the end of the last meeting, I kind of got on my soapbox and started the ball rolling of what everybody said about the fact that we have a tremendous amount of people investing private money. This is my perfect example of a public-private partnership, and so I'm going to stick with my motion, and I'd like the rest of the council to consider doing this right and putting up the money we need to make the budget.
All right. And Councilman Roby?
Kristen, allow me to put you on the spot one more time. Just in terms of overall fiscal responsibility, I think the city's tendency over the years, of course, to be very conservative, and that way we're always able to weather out any storm we may run into. So, Kristen, if this goes to a $3 million budget this year, in other words, adding $1 million to the budget, we know the project's going to get spread out over more than 2 years. Would you just roll that out for us and why we have to budget for the whole amount versus, leaving the budget $2 million now, then $1 million next year?
So I think the best way to track the money is to do the budget supplement now. The city, under our home rule charter, we are allowed to do what's called the capital carryover. So essentially what we can do is we can take a project that is either not started or has started but not completed and carry over the budget authority for that project. So it's the best way to kind of keep track of it and not lose the project in the mix. So that's why I would essentially say that we're best to, if this is the route the council goes, we increase the budget to $3 million. That way, whatever is left is carried over into 2022 and it's not kind of lost in the shuffle.
Thank you. Good question. Anyone else? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. All right, very good.
Thanks, everybody, for coming
Thank you
and
for coming.
supporting. Yeah.
I know, every single one. All right.
That's what keeps us going, Matt. That's what keeps us going through these long meetings, is clap for ourselves.
The next item on the agenda is appointment of the fire chief. Chief Kranz has been a wonderful leader. For 33 years, he's been in the fire department, and he's retiring at the end of the month. So we have to say goodbye, and we must appoint a new fire chief. This is a department head position, so it's up to the mayor to make the appointment and for the council to ratify it. After visiting with the council and reading numerous letters and notes of recommendation from community leaders that reached out to me, including medical and industry representatives, as well as fire chiefs from other communities, And considering my own extensive personal and professional experience with him, it's my recommendation to appoint Don Rowland as the fire chief. A few departments have such clear succession plans as the fire department, and Don has served at every level from top to bottom, from entry-level firefighter, 13 years as a firefighter, paramedic, 2 years as a lieutenant, 6 years as a battalion chief, 8 years as assistant fire chief. And during those 8 years as assistant fire chief, he's been given challenging responsibilities. It's not just been lip service, it's been difficult at times. And he's acted as a fire chief in the absence of Chief Kranz. So there's no question that Don can do the job very competently. There's absolutely nothing in Don's background that would make me doubt his ability, integrity, or preparation for this role. And furthermore, opening the position for competitive interviews would suggest a willingness on my part to promote a subordinate over a superior position in the responsibility chart, which could do irreparable harm to the morale of the organization. Therefore, I'm recommending Don Rowland be appointed as fire chief, effective upon the retirement of Chief Doug Kranz at 5 p.m. on Monday, May 31st.
Make a motion?
Have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Manti. And do we have any discussion?
Just that it's a great idea.
All right, we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Congratulations. Clap, clap. You want to say a few words, please? I'll give you the floor, Don.
Mayor Karen and members of City Council, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for your wonderful support. I am honored and grateful and inspired to accept this position as Fire Chief for Watertown Fire Rescue. Becoming a Fire Chief is for this wonderful organization is a great opportunity with tremendous responsibility, and I will work tirelessly to provide the highest quality of fire and ambulance protection to the citizens of this community. It has been an honor and a privilege to work alongside Chief Kranz for the last 28 years. For the past 8 years, I've served as Assistant Chief to Doug. Throughout that time, I've gained an invaluable amount of education, experience in the fire and EMS administration from him. In addition to his mentoring, I'm thankful to have gained a lifelong friend. Chief Kranz will truly be missed. I believe in the strong team effort and the incredible Watertown Fire Rescue Command staff and firefighters. They've made me very proficient to serve in this next role as Fire Chief. Together, we will continue to serve in the adherence of our core values of service excellence, integrity and honesty, professionalism, tradition and pride, as well as brotherhood. We will continue to strive to exceed the expectations of our community by utilizing our strategic goals to guide us through our mission. I would also like to thank God for watching over me and blessing me with the ability to work in this position. Also, many thanks goes to my wife, Teresa, my son, Tyler, my daughter-in-law, Haley, for their unconditional support and love throughout this process. Once again, I am looking forward to starting this new journey as Watertown Fire Rescue's new Fire Chief. Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations. We already clapped. Should we clap again?
Thank you so much. And can we give a round of an acknowledgement to Chief Kranz for 33 exceptional years as a firefighter and 10 plus years as a fire chief for this community. He's done an amazing job, the mentor that I could never imagine ever having. I'm going to miss him dearly, and thank you so much, Chief Kranz.
Yes. Thank you. This is a happy night. All right, the next item on the agenda is appointment of the HR director, and I will take that one. I want to let the folks know, because we talked about this, the the person that we're recommending was interviewed by our incoming city manager. She participated in the interview process, and so that was really good to have her. She'll be reporting. I'm recommending the appointment of Darcy Nichols as a Human Resources Director with a starting date of June 1st, 2021. And so I'll look for a motion for that.
So move.
We have a motion by, that was fast. Motion by Albertson and second by Bueller. I did not forget your name. All right, any discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Item C is the second reading of ordinance number 21-14, an ordinance amending numerous sections of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown relating to the transition from a strong mayor to a council manager form of government. I have a motion, wave your hands, by Vilhauer and a second by Rademski. Okay, and I will ask the city attorney, Matt Roby, to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple months ago, there was a subcommittee of the council that was convened to take a look at, if there are any ordinance changes that may be needed as we embark on this new city manager form of government. And it kind of culminated in a resolution that one of the items that spelled out was that we, of course, change in our ordinance anytime it talks about the mayor acting in an administrative capacity, change that to city manager. And so this ordinance does just that. It calls out numerous sections of the ordinance where the word will just change from mayor to city manager. It also calls out a couple of sections where council president will be changed to deputy mayor. And then there's a couple of additional items here that I caught between the first and second reading where we're changing essentially the implication of the mayor acting in the capacity to the city manager. It's just that the wording was kind of a little bit wonky, and so it had to be called out in its own section. And then there was also a section where we're replacing mayor with public works director as it relates to traffic and parking issues. And one other item that's different from the first to the second reading I wanted to point out in consultation with the Public Works Director. I had originally proposed that we change, there's a section that allows for the mayor to grant curb space, reserve curb space downtown. And I had originally proposed to change that to the Public Works Director. And again, in discussions with the Public Works Director and the mayor, they felt that that's more of a political function. And so rather than the Public Works Director making that call, any requests for reserved curb space downtown would have to come to the council. So.
Thank you. Yeah. Any questions? Councilman Vilhauer.
Matt, as I recall, 2 weeks ago, you said there were going to be a few other changes, a little more substantive. I mean, have you caught those now, or are they still something more coming in the future?
So one, I don't know if you wanted to do that right now or not, but I did. So for example, and it's good that the fire department's here, there is a, let me pull it up here. There's an ordinance that essentially says that in the course of fighting a fire, the fire chief in consultation, or with the, let me pull it up so I can get the exact wording, essentially allows the fire chief to order buildings torn down. And it says you have to consult the mayor or get 2 aldermen to sign off on that. Buildings torn down that aren't currently on fire in order to stop a fire from progressing. And so that was one where I thought, I wasn't sure, whether the city manager should be a part of that conversation or if that really should come to the council, or if we should just strike it. So that was one that I thought I would bring back, given the long agenda tonight. I thought I'd bring back at the next meeting. And there's also some changes that'll have to come forward probably when we impanel the new council that are related to the subcommittees of the council. Right now it calls out 2 5-member subcommittees. Of course, currently we're operating as basically one big subcommittee prior to the council meeting. But I thought that once the new council is seated and the city manager is on board, we can kind of decide, you folks can kind of decide how that should look. So there's a couple tweaks there. And then finally, shouldn't say finally, I'm sure I'll find something else. But one of the other items on my to-do list around this time that's required by state law is we have to have a form of an administrative appeal enacted into ordinance. So essentially, we're allowed to tweak our form of government in such a way in our home rule charter like we have. But if we do anything other than what is spelled out in black and white in statute, it says that you have to have an administrative appeal function kind of for anything city related. And anyway, I intend to bring that forward as well here in the next meeting or two.
So the short answer is yes, there's more coming.
Yes.
Thanks, Matt.
More coming. Councilman Hoyer?
Just quick question for Chief Kranz. Is that law, do you think that comes from old downtown structures where buildings were built right on top of each other? And is it still appropriate to really have that on the books, or do you hit some scenarios yet where that can come up?
So I think the intention of that scenario, I remember it coming up probably a year or two ago. I think it's more for if you have a fire in a building and the integrity of that building, the brick walls, possibly the brick walls of the adjoining building, like say in the downtown, is structurally unsound or uncertain. And so it becomes a safety issue to the public. And I believe it was I thought we had considered the police chief, the fire chief, and the mayor, and probably a couple council members. But I think it's more if this building's hanging out there or the building next to it that after a fire that, do we have to do something? We have to block that off. Is that wall going to just tumble out onto the road? So I think it's more for that.
Yeah, so there is that. Actually, I just finally pulled it up here. There's two provisions. There's two subparts to this ordinance. One is exactly what you're talking about, where a building, like half of it remains standing, the other half was burnt. You have to make the decision whether to tear it down or not. The other half, though, is, if there's a fire in progress at an adjoining building, there is a provision here that gives you, with the advising consent of the mayor or any two council members, the right to, let's say you have to tear down a building that's not being burnt in order to stop the fire from jumping to building to building to building. So there's a provision for that. And so I don't know if that's a political question or if that's an administrative question or.
I believe that one would not ever be exercised, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. We don't bill them that way anymore. Any other comments or questions?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
While Matt's got that section open, if it's not already in there, I would recommend maybe adding the building official to that list of players that are deciding on the structural integrity of a building. I was thinking it was already in there, but maybe it's not. But I know that's common for their communities to have the building official plugged into those conversations, not only in cases of a fire, but other structures that are sometimes deemed not structurally sound, and that might be a good resource to have in that ordinance.
Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item D is the second reading of ordinance number 21-15, an ordinance amending chapter 1.04 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown to allow temporary variations to regulations relating to businesses and lessees at the airport. I need a motion. A motion by Manti and a second by Bueller. And I will ask the city attorney, Matt Roby, to tell us about this.
Thank you, Mayor. What's that? Oh. So essentially what, just a quick history here. The airport board was recently approached by a potential egg spray operator that wants to locate at the Watertown Airport. And through discussions and review of the ordinance, it was discovered that there is currently, so we have minimum standards laid out in our ordinance for aeronautical services providers that operate out of our airport. But there's no provision in there that allows for any sort of flexibility to the airport board and ultimately the council. Should a unforeseen scenario occur to allow some flexibility with those minimum standards. So what you have in front of you here is a provision that would be added to ordinance as a tool for the airport board to allow a temporary variation to the minimum standards. And we've been in communications with the FAA on this. They stress that this needs to be temporary. And so you'll see there that no variation from the minimum standards can last more than a year. And again, it's just another tool so an example I would give is if there was one of the aeronautical standards might be to have a building constructed at the airport. The airport board might approve that operator to begin operations there while the building's under construction. That sort of scenario. So that's kind of what's going on here. The applicant that it came forward to the airport board that kind of prompted this discussion is here tonight. I don't know if he wanted to say anything at all, but that's kind of the background of this request. Now that request is kind of being dealt with there's some separate considerations that are going into that, but this again standing on its own would just be another tool in the airport ordinance toolbox that would allow for something like this going forward.
Sir, you're welcome to have the floor for a couple minutes.
Okay.
Identify yourself.
Dan Sire, Buffalo Ridge Air Spray 2. I went to the airport board with a request to be able to do some aerial operations out of there. I have been aware of these ordinances for a few years. I have operated my own business for 6 out of other airports. Watertown's been my home my entire life other than my college years. I plan on renting a house for my hired pilot. I will have a great economic impact to the city of Watertown, but trying to cross this hurdle of these ordinances is the fact that I went to the airport board and I said, hey, look, I'd like to start a business here, and as a company to the rest of my locations. Well, the area of the airport where they want egg operations has zero taxiway to it. It's over by the stone hangar. You would need like 2,000 feet roughly of taxiway. There's no water, sewer, electric. There's zero infrastructure there. So I said, well, okay, what are we going to do there? Well, they said that's where we want egg operators to be, but we've used all the money for this year, next year, the following year we want a piece of snow removal equipment. So they're saying it's going to be 2025-ish before they have a location for me to build what I want to build. And I would start building immediately. Well, I don't have, there would be no materials available for quite some time because of just supply. So then I said to the airport manager and board, I said, well, find me a different place. I don't want to be in general aviation. I do like the location of ag operators being over there. The answer to that is, we have nowhere for you to build over there. So, I mean, I think as a city, we should actually probably look at the ordinances and the ordinance of having to have a 600 square foot building with a bathroom, and that is just to keep people from, I mean, essentially at some point this was made by somebody that probably didn't want competition out of the airport. There is an ordinance that says you have to have a loading pad. Well, in the ordinance it has to be I think concrete, gravel, centrally sloped. There is actually EPA certified load pads out there that are very, very competent for a load pad. As well as I use dry brakes on fuel and loading chemical into the airplane, and that's actually, I mean, not even in one of your guys' ordinances. I believe that there should be ordinances to protect the environmental protection, double-walled fuel tanks, load pads, that kind of thing is very feasible. But to say that you have to have a building with a bathroom to operate a business out of there, it doesn't, I mean, there's a lot of aerial applicators that have locations at different airports that just have lockable storage for chemical, you know, temporary or whatever offices. And I would like to build a permanent one, but I mean, 2025, come on, that's way too long to sit idle. And I mean, I'm going to keep doing my business out of the other airports, but I'd much rather not have to go 45 to 60 miles to one of my locations. I'd rather start my day here in Watertown. And, you know, I just feel like I've kind of been getting just pushed back. Like we don't want to do the work to get you here, you know. But I even picked out a couple places at the airport. One was over by the Stone Hangar. There's an asphalt pad there. Well, then I was told that we have to have an archaeological study. That a tribe has to bring in some people to look for artifacts. And one of the concerns was affecting the structural integrity of a historic site, which is the Stone Hangar. I don't want to be in the Stone Hangar. I mean, the city uses that for storage of snow removal equipment in the summer and lawn equipment in the winter. I just want to use temporarily the asphalt out adjacent to, you know, the Stone Hangar until something permanent, until we can find a place that I can build a hangar. And I mean, there's not one for sale, there's not one for rent out there. I mean, my back's up against the wall.
Yeah, thank you. I think we'd be happy to look at our ordinances and do whatever we can. We actually have been making lots of revisions to our ordinances to make sure they're relevant. So if you want to make a list of all the things you seem to be familiar with them, and a lot more than we probably are, because this doesn't come up very often.
Absolutely, yeah. I definitely would write a proposal. I mean, like I said, some of the stuff for environmental standards is great, but to have a brick and mortar building I mean, that doesn't I don't think needs to be a hang up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Dan, before you go, I had a quick question.
Hey, Bruce.
How you doing?
Good.
Not very good, it sounds, but anyway, just you have looked for a temporary solution for this. Are there areas out there where you could be housed until such time that we've got the facilities necessary for you to operate out of?
Yes, okay, so in the general aviation area, so the airport manager asked me how many square feet I needed, and I was just kind of shooting from the cuff, you know, 100 by 100, 10,000 square feet. Well, after going out to the airport and looking around, there used to be a hangar, a set of hangars that ran north and south, and it would be just west of the terminal building. It's a big concrete pad. That's where there's some fire training that's going on. Actually, this week, I have one of my airplanes tied down out there. I need to go move it here in the next couple of days because they're bringing in fire trucks and all that. After looking at it, that is more than enough room to stay inside of the obstruction-free zone to load out of. And the other place is right by the Stone Hangar, but north of the doorway, so that the city wouldn't have a problem, you know, they would be able to still get into that Stone Hangar, and it's an asphalt pad. Supposedly, they got to have this survey done, which is going to cost the city $40,000 to have the tribe come out. And I asked, I said, well, if I'm not moving dirt, if I'm not, you know, disturbing anything, and I'm just putting, you know, a load pad on this asphalt and then a water tank and, you know, and a fuel tank, why do we have to have this archaeological study? You know, I guess that's the other answer I got was, well, the Stone Hangar's integrity. I want to be 100 feet away from the Stone Hangar. I'm not going to be going in and out of there. You know, the only thing that I would even ask is possibly running electric from the Stone Hangar, which I would pay for the electric. I mean, I pay the whole dang bill. I don't care. You know, I've said I would even lease the spot over right behind the shooting range where I would want the hangar, where the ag operations are supposed to be. I mean, but it still would. You can't taxi a loaded spray plane across grass after 3 inches of rain, you know, so, and I was also told that if I came up with the $2 million for the infrastructure, that we could speed that up, and I'm like, well, that's,
You know, Dan, I would hope that barring any federal issues with you, I think that we need to work towards finding you a temporary solution to this until we can get to where they think they gotta be.
Well,
That's my opinion. I think the board needs to look at that, and, you know, unless we're infringing on any other ordinances, I think we should do everything we can to get you up and running.
And I think this, the ordinance change that we're talking about tonight isn't going to solve your problem, but it is going to help by allowing some temporary activities to take place, which could help in this type of a situation. Now you got a bunch of other issues, but at least this opens the door to be able to take temporary action.
Well, I agree with that fully, and like I said, I mean, if we can find space to build, that's my first option, but I've been told that there is no space at all in the general aviation and obviously without me putting up $2 million for a taxiway and infrastructure over where the ag operations are going to be in 2025. So I would really like to see a temporary variance, but also I will come back with a proposal of some ordinances that maybe should just be like the brick and mortar thing, you know, and we should do away with that, but keep, you know, the environmental safeguards there.
Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Hoyer?
And I'm speaking a little bit from a former hazmat certified loader, but I mean, as long as we're hitting the EPA and federal requirements, I mean, absolutely, we got to just figure it out because there's no reason we should infringe. So echo all the same sentiment with the variance. I just want to make sure we don't end up turning this into like an annual renewal kind of thing.
Well, yeah.
Which I'm not worried about that happening with this necessarily. This is just a step to get us where we need to go. But I'm saying on our side, city side, that we got to make sure we do our due diligence too, so that this Band-Aid doesn't become the permanent solution. We actually fix it.
Right, absolutely, I agree. And like these, I mean, I wrote the proposal to the airport board, and you know, I had pictures and all this, and you know, the drive over load pads, you know, you can cover them every night with a heavy rubber mat, but you know, and then remove them every day so they're not filling up with water, and obviously rainwater is not going to kill anything, but it looks like an eyesore. We would, you know, use a nice heavy rubber mat, cover it up at the end of the day, uncover it, and so I mean, the load pad, like I said, is definitely needed, but yeah, thank you.
All right, and Public Works Director Heath Von Eyde, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Mayor, if I could add a little more context. In the discussions here where we're trying to accommodate Mr. Sawyer's requests, the airport manager, Todd Sire, who wasn't able to join us tonight, has worked pretty closely with Dan and with the airport board. And really, to the point you made a minute ago, Mayor, where this ordinance amendment isn't necessarily finding us a solution yet, what we found in our research with the FAA is we were hoping that this ordinance amendment was the solution, and we've since got advised from the FAA that because our airport CIP includes an ag applicator area in the 5-year CIP, and it's 4 or 5 years out, they advise not allowing a temporary variance for this operation for 1 year because the permanent solution is in the works in the CIP, in the capital improvement plan for the airport. So we're up against that at this point, is wading through the federal recommendations from the FAA on what we can allow temporarily, and that has been advised to the airport board. And so the next step we were working on was the ordinance amendment, amending Title I so that we can look at some of those requirements. But still, the end solution to get Mr. Sawyer spraying out of Watertown at this point does appear to be 4 to 5 years out because of the FAA's recommendation on that CIP. And I know that's not the answer anybody in this room wants to hear, myself included. And we'll continue to seek answers better than that as much as we can with Matt's assistance and with the airport manager's assistance.
Why is it that the FAA doesn't have these same restrictions at every other, I mean, I don't understand. There's a lot of cities that don't have the restriction that you have to have a brick and mortar building. I mean, I don't know of another town that you have to follow these restrictions. So why is the FAA telling you guys that you really have to go by this standard, but then all these other airports do not have these same recommendations or standards? So what I'm getting here is that we need to make an adjustment to the city ordinance. Is that what you're saying?
That is part of the solution, Dan, where the FAA's advisement came to us because of what's in place today. They know our ordinance. Todd shared it with them. They see what it is. And then also the other factor that comes into play is we have one aerial ag operator that meets those ordinance requirements today. And that's where the FAA advised us that you could get a complaint filed against you if you allow a temporary operator in that does not meet the ordinance requirements that your other operator currently meets. And when we have all of our grant assurances in place at the airport for all the grants we've received over the years, we simply want to avoid complaints being filed against the airport proper to the FAA for reasons like that. So that's where they've advised us to not go that route on a temporary basis with that permanent one in place.
All right, thank you. Councilman Hoyer?
So just out of curiosity, since you said the airport wants them out on the ag location, which is scheduled for 2025, where's the current one located at?
Right next to the Watertown terminal.
Yeah, it's directly to the west of the current terminal building is the one ag operator that's there now with their fixed location.
Have they just been there for an extremely long time?
I guess I don't know how many years.
It's been about 5 years, 5 or 6 years, about the same time I started my own business, because that was actually a business that I had worked for previously. I had sold out the year that I started my own. And I could be wrong, but I do believe at one point in time the ag operators were not supposed to be right next to the Watertown terminal. I do not know that for sure, because of a problem that a past ag operator had with an exposure of a child coming out of the terminal building and then getting their hands on the airplane and getting sick from the chemical or what have you. And that's just what I was told by somebody. But anyhow, like I said, find me a different place on the airport. I'll go get the building permit. I'll hire a contractor to start as soon. So don't pigeonhole me with, I have to be out there, but you're 5 years out. You know, if we can build an over by General Aviation, there's already former aerial applicators, Jerry's spray service. It's right on the front of that hangar, which is now owned by a private individual. This other gentleman's over there. So find me a solution on General Aviation then. I don't have to be over there. You know, I mean, you're telling me I got to be 5 years out to go run my business just because that's where you want to see aviation?
The problem is the infrastructure isn't there. So, I mean, we can look at our ordinances to see if you really need the infrastructure. Then I think we can do that. And we absolutely will follow the FAA rules. We've learned from experience how critically important that is. We aren't like all airports. We rely very heavily on funding because we're an essential air service airport, and it used to be a base. It's not like it was a field that somebody built as their own private airport that's expanded. So we'll see what we can do. Councilman Rudemski?
Question for Heath. Is the FAA aware that there is no land available out there at this time? And are they also aware that the gentleman wants to build and is willing to build?
Yes, correct. The FAA's keenly aware. They have I think it's a bi-weekly meeting that Todd has with the FAA, and they would talk about the CIP and these projects that are past projects that they're wrapping up, current projects, and future projects. So they all stay in step with the knowledge of what's going on with the CIP. So they are aware of the limited space out there. As far as the recommendation from Mr. Sawyer to build some of the infrastructure, they're okay with that, but it's to the tune of the $2 million. I mean, it's not just putting a building out there, but you need the taxiway, you need the water, you need the electric, and all those other things to support the rest of the
So
operation.
in the meantime, they didn't want to issue a temporary permit for a year because it wouldn't be in compliance with what we're asking the current chemical sprayer out there now?
Correct, that's a fair statement.
Which to me doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, if he's trying to do everything he can to operate a business out there, and if we can't provide him with a temporary solution to this, I guess it kind of defeats the purpose.
All right, well, the question at hand is, do we want to do this temporary language to allow for variances of a temporary nature? So kind of got off on a long tangent there. Do we have any more questions or comments relating to the language of the ordinance that's proposed? Councilman Hoyer?
Just confirming, this helps resolve something, correct? We're not,
This would have to be done in order to do a temporary
okay.
basis.
I'm just confirming it because it kind of got lost a little bit in the
Yep.
scuttle there.
There's more that has to be done, but this is one of the
This is
steps.
one of the first steps, okay.
Anyone else? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, item E, first reading of ordinance number 21-16, an amendment to chapter 24.06 subdivision procedure of the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown. No motion because it's no action tonight. Public Works Director Heath Von Eyde, will you tell us about it, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is an amendment to Chapter 24 of the subdivision regulations of the city ordinances. Real briefly, what all this is doing is adding back in some language that was inadvertently left out when we updated the subdivision review process. We had inadvertently, and we're going to relocate the requirement for the lowest recommended floor elevations on a residence to be at least 2 feet above the normal groundwater elevation. I believe all of you are familiar with that requirement. And we're adding that language back in to the appropriate section, and also correlates with the construction plan requirements and some notes regarding the information we receive on our construction plans to that same to the same tune. The test holes shall be determined. Test holes shall determine groundwater elevation where applicable, and that'll all be included in the preliminary plan requirements for development.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilman Hoyer?
How accurate are test holes? Is that the previous language we were using before too?
Yeah, the discussion, Councilman Hoyer, on the accuracy of test holes is, it's pretty, it can be pretty subjective when they're taken, when they're observed, when the water levels are read. You could have a wet season, you could be in a dry season. We've had that discussion with builders. We've talked about this off and on. And really, we haven't gotten a silver bullet solution other than simply requesting that they are carried out. We think it's at least a good starting point to help ensure that the lowest finished floor elevations are at an appropriate elevation.
I guess the follow-up to that, because I know we talked about this 2 years ago when we had the wonderful lengthy discussion on sump pumps. I guess I'm wondering, do we have the capacity, and we may not because we're always dealing with staffing, do we have the capacity to take the feedback we get from these test holes and essentially just put it into a database so we can kind of get an average for some of these areas? Because that might give us a little more fidelity at a lower cost, just because it is kind of a ballpark thing. And
That's a great idea.
It is. Yeah, and I would say that through our GIS, we could definitely accomplish something like that. That'd be great. Or GIS, or through our pending upcoming community development software.
Yeah. Good point. Anyone else? Item F, first reading of ordinance number 21-17, an amendment to chapter 2190 of the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown, amending the definition for bar or tavern. And again, no action, first reading. City Attorney Matt Roby.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This was an action that was kind of spurred to life with Councilman Hoyer here sitting next to me. Essentially, just to cut to the chase, what this would do, and I will defer to him kind of explain the rationale, but essentially what this would do is a business that wants to solely sell off-sale alcohol, be it a liquor store, or if in the future, the city decides to approve off-sale at a convenience stores or markets or grocery stores, that sort of thing, they would not have to get a conditional use permit. Right now, the sale of alcohol in Watertown anywhere requires a conditional use permit, bar, tavern. This would remove that requirement for the off-sale sale of alcoholic beverages. And I would defer to Councilman Hoyer here for kind of some of the background and rationale.
Sure. I guess some of the context to this is that I opened up a question of just asking, so what's the ordinance that says you can't sell beer or wine in a gas station? And then I was informed there is no ordinance that says that. And just for the public there is no ordinance that actually says that anywhere. So then it just kind of spurred, well, what are the things that you need to be able to do it? And I was, then going through the ordinances and found that you had to get a conditional use as a bar tavern. Even if you were just going to do off sale, essentially sell a product, not for consumption on site, you'd still have to get a conditional use as a bar tavern. And for me, I always view that as words just have meaning. And if you're not drinking it there, I'm like, that's not a bar, that's not a tavern, that's just a grocery store. So that's where this conversation kind of started. And so it just takes away the need to seek the conditional use to get a bar tavern. So you still have to, when you get an on-sale, off-sale license, because they are combined, you have to go through the process of, are you in proximity to a school so far? It still covers all that sort of thing. You're not near a daycare, that kind of thing. But this eliminates the need to basically do it twice, because it is self-police. The council still makes the call on it. This just kind of cleans up the language more than anything and makes one less hoop for folks to jump through on it. It still has a policing function, and there is a checks and balance to this, but it was a little bit of an archaic way of dealing with it. Other communities don't really do it that way either. So I was just hoping to clean it up a little bit.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns? All right, we'll move on. Item G is the first reading of ordinance number 21-18, ordinance amendments to chapter 21.1002, residential height and placement regulations for accessory structures, chapter 21.12, A1 agricultural district, chapter 21.28, C3 highway commercial district, chapter 21.32, I1 light industrial district, and chapter 2190 definitions pertaining to commercial kennels to the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown. And I think I'll let, this might be a team effort between the city attorney and the public works director. We'll start with Matt Roby, city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. So the next two agenda items are related. Essentially, what happened here is the discussion on these items started at the Animal Control Board. Where the Animal Control Board, the question arose whether or not there is a maximum allowable number of dogs in our community. That's kind of what spurred the conversation. So we look at the ordinance and we see that there's two definitions of kennel in the ordinance. There's one in the zoning ordinance, Title 21, and one in the animal control ordinance. And they're a bit conflicting. And so at the end of the day, the Title 21 ordinance appears to be, you could construe Title 21 to only allow the ownership of more than 2 dogs with a conditional use in the ag zone. The Animal Control Board didn't think that was appropriate, so they kind of set out to talk to the Plan Commission, to join forces a little bit and see how we can provide some clarity to the number of dogs allowed in Watertown, as well as there was a kind of an incidental issue with kennels and dog houses themselves, and whether or not there's a 50-foot requirement between houses. And so that kind of got wrapped into this as well. And so the first, what Heath will describe here, is the resulting proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance. And then the next item are the proposed amendments to the animal control ordinance.
Thank you. Heath, you want to take it?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Matt. Also thank Brandy and Stacy. They've worked extensively with this group, with Matt and the Animal Control Board in relation to the zoning implications. So there's a handful on these particular ordinances that, or sections of the ordinance that the mayor cited in the title of the action item here. A number of those areas of the zoning ordinance that are impacted on by this. Most of these are pretty straightforward housekeeping items, just to kind of clarify the intent. What we're doing is deleting a kennel definition under the animal control ordinance, but then we're also removing 50-foot kennel doghouse rule. We'll potentially add that back in the future. There was a rule in the zoning ordinance, or there is a rule, I should say, that requires a kennel to be at least 50 foot from the property line. But there's also some anomalies in that language that that you could interpret that to mean a commercial kennel, and you could also interpret that to mean a private kennel. So we're simply striking that language from the zoning ordinance. We are, however, adding back in the regulation of dog enclosures, and that they be required to meet the same setbacks as an accessory structure greater than 200 square feet, such as a detached garage. This is something that the committee, certain members of the committee really felt that was important to do. There was a lot of discussion about whether it was worth having essentially doghouse setback requirements or not. As this is drafted right now, we are implementing doghouse setback requirements. I just wanted to make sure that point was clear to the council, because that does add an extra layer of work for staff to administer that requirement. Some other quick amendment notes here. We are defining what a dog enclosure is so that we're not confusing a private kennel versus a commercial kennel. We're going to define what a dog enclosure is. We're going to prohibit the non-commercial keeping of more than 5 dogs. That means that anybody has Fido plus 4 in their house, they're at the max of what they can have. So we also are going to change the kennel to commercial kennel under the zoning definitions. So again, that's clarified, not to be confused with a private kennel run. And under commercial kennels, as newly defined, they will require a conditional use permit available in the A1 district, the C3, and the I1 districts. Hence, all the amendments to those sections of the code. With all that, I'll stand by for questions. Again, Brandy and Stacy are online too, and we can help answer anything.
Okay, thank you. And for the record, Councilman Lallam has logged off, so we're down to 9. Questions? Councilman Bueller?
Thank you, Mayor. Heath, what spurred all these changes? I mean, what have the problems been? What issues have we had that made us think we needed to make all these changes?
Matt can maybe chime in a little bit better than I could. I can tell you from the zoning standpoint, really the only reason we're changing anything is because we had some anomalies in the language. You could interpret it one way or the other. And that's exactly what was being done. The setback for a kennel, for example, when I got here, I interpreted that to mean, oh, they're talking commercial kennels. This doesn't apply to Fido's kennel in the private backyard. Well, it turns out others had interpreted it the other way, and we were applying a 50-foot setback to private kennels in the backyard. So we realized we needed to do some cleanup. What started the whole discussion, I believe, like Matt described, came from the Animal Control Board and just the number of dogs, if there's a limit in town or isn't there, and that kind of opened the books on all these dog regulations in general.
Well, on the setback side of it now, is that a rear yard setback and a side yard setback? So if you had a kennel, you got to be 50 feet from the rear. I'm sorry, maybe I don't understand this.
Used to.
The current language was a flat 50 feet from the property line for a kennel. Now the new language, we're taking setback requirements that we already have. Those are the setbacks required for a 200 square foot building. And I could let Brandy chime in on what those are. I believe they're 9 foot on the side yard. I forget what they are on the rear. But there will be setbacks like that for a dog enclosure.
And then if we do have that, if we do have those 9 foot setbacks, how does that work for, is that retroactive? I mean, how, if people have kennels that are closer to the property line, how does that work? How would that work? And is this going to be by a complaint basis only that we?
I would say that's likely what it would turn into from an administration standpoint. That would, just to be honest, Bruce, that would be one of the concerns staff would have is how retro does this become on a complaint basis? What is staff seeking out to seek corrected or not? It's just, again, it adds another regulation that we'll have to administer, and we'll gladly do that if that's what the council decides. And I think that the committee did a fair amount of discussion on this. I kept asking the question when I was at the meetings I was involved is, are we solving a current problem with this amendment? And I think some felt we are, some felt no, there's really not a problem here. So it really was kind of a mixed bag.
Right. There has been a tremendous amount of time spent to get to where we are right now. Oh, there's so much debate. Should we not? So I think this is a good product that they landed on. Councilman Billhauer?
I'd make a suggestion that to go back and watch the May 6th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. It gets kind of long and drug out, but it's a good discussion as to how the Planning Commission landed at this. So I'd recommend taking the time to go back and watch that.
If you do that, excuse my rudeness towards Todd Case.
Oh, yeah.
I apologize to him later.
That's right, I get to be rude to him all the time, so. Then the Animal Control Board, in same fashion, has had meetings on this for probably almost a year. So, and it was that got us to the point where we needed to come into some kind of joint study group with planning and zoning. So, yeah, that is talk about being discussed. It has been discussed.
Right. And I would imagine that anyone with live dogs in numbers greater than 5 will be grandfathered in, I'm guessing. How do we deal with that if someone has 6 pets, 6 dogs right now when if the ordinance passes? Oops. Would that be the city attorney answering me?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I would think, you'd let one attrition.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, so with grandfathering, there's we look at what somebody has in an investment into a structure of, for example, if there's a structure that was built before a rule change, there's grandfathering. There can be some wiggle room there depending on how easy the correction is. Now, if somebody has 6 dogs right now, I don't think we're going to run out and require them to euthanize one of their dogs.
No.
But it's just a tool in the toolbox. As was suggested, most these animal control ordinances are almost entirely complaint-based. And so it's really going to come down to somebody saying, hey, my neighbor's got 9 dogs or something like that, and then we'll go out, we'll talk to them. And there's going to be a conversation about, hey, we passed this new rule, trying to figure out how long they've had the dogs, and can we sunset this out, that sort of thing. So there'll be some leeway there, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We did ask the animal control officer how common it was for somebody to have more than 5 dogs in town, and he said basically that rarely, that maybe he can think of 1 or 2 or something that came up. So it's not something that happens a lot. And we do want to be seen as a dog-friendly town, so that's why we didn't make it like you can only have 1 dog. But we also know that people have enjoyment of their property and they don't need to live next door to 10 dogs. So that's where we ask, it doesn't happen a lot, the multiple.
Right, thank you. Anyone else have any input? Okay, move on. Item H is the first reading of ordinance number 21-19, an ordinance amending sections 3.0101, 3.0105, and 3.0109 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown pertaining to dog houses and the number of allowable dogs. And I will ask the City Attorney, Matt Roby, do you tell us about this?
Just real briefly, this again is just a follow-on to the last item. Heath actually touched on all the items that this actually does as well, and so it deletes the definition of kennel from the animal control ordinance, and in conjunction with this, there was the revised definition of a commercial kennel in Title 21. It deletes the 50-foot rule that was previously in the animal control ordinance, and we replaced it with this new setback in relation to dog houses in Title 21, and then finally it makes it explicit under the animal control ordinance that no more than 5 dogs is allowed.
All right, thank you. Any questions about this? We kind of already talked about it. Thank you. Okay, item J is the first reading of ordinance number 21-21, an amendment to chapter 2.01, alcoholic beverages of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown. City Attorney Matt Roby.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a triple. So this ordinance amendment actually kills 3 birds with 1 stone. What it does is, 1, it revises the subpart 1 of 2.0102, and there was talk about there's going to be a restaurant at the airport, but previously this said that you couldn't have alcoholic beverages located in the A1 zone, so that we knew that was going to have to be a change that came forward. So that's part of this. So now it'll, instead of calling out zones, it'll just say the alcoholic beverage licensees can't be located in residential districts. 2, it requires, because, you know, if the council goes forward and adopts this change to the bar tavern rule, finance office was a little bit concerned that there wasn't going to be some coordination still with the community development department. And so essentially what finance will do, if somebody comes in for a license, they'll make them go upstairs and make sure that wherever they intend to operate, they're zoned correctly for that. And then 3, and it doesn't show up on here, but it will be in the second reading, is that this says, shall be approved by the mayor and city council, and we're gonna strike mayor and it'll just say city council, so 3 birds, 1 stone.
All righty. Any questions or comments? Councilman Villar?
I know we're trying to get through the long agenda, but did we skip an item?
Oh, did we? What did we skip?
Dangerous and vicious dogs.
Oh, where's that one?
Reading of that one.
So I had that one in my hand and I'm like, what's Matt talking about?
Which letter is it? Am I on the
it
old
is,
agenda? Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, well, let's finish this one first, then we'll go back. Anyone have any questions about the alcoholic beverage amendment? Councilman Hoyer?
I don't have a question. I'm just going to point out, though, because I know we said they'd go upstairs, but the applicant will also be seeking the zoning verification letter, too. So they have the letter included as well. That's just a very firm, this is actually in the right place. Because I know there was a little bit of concern on the planning side of it, of just making sure that it is in the appropriate location.
Yeah, that's a good step. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to back up to I. First reading of ordinance number 21-20, an ordinance amending sections 3.0101 and 3.0104 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown, making modifications to the dangerous and vicious dog process. So, City Attorney, Matt Roby.
Thank you, Mayor. 2019, the Animal Control Board, after a lengthy deliberations on our new dangerous and vicious dog ordinance, came forward to the council. The council approved it. Since then, there's been, I don't know, I would say half a dozen or more incidences of this ordinance having to be put into effect. And the Animal Control Board identified a couple areas that maybe we could tweak it. So what this will do, I'll just hit the brief points here. One, it kind of clarifies that right now there's an exception. So just for example, if a dog attacks somebody who's breaking into your house, it's not a dangerous dog because they're attacking a criminal. So we had an issue with a child wandering onto a property, but there was no criminal intent, and so it got to be confusing. Anyway, so we're citing the state law regarding criminal trespass. It gives the discretion to the animal control officer to immediately seize a dog if it's determined that the dog is, imminently dangerous to public safety, imminently threatening to public safety. It increases the time for somebody whose dog has been deemed dangerous or vicious from 5 days to 10 days, and then correspondingly gives the Animal Control Board 10 days to schedule the hearing. And then finally, it gives the board more discretion when it comes to somebody's dog is declared dangerous or vicious, and they appeal that decision to the Animal Control Board. There wasn't as much discretion in allowing them to come up with creative solutions, like, for example, microchipping or building a fence or that sort of thing. So it allows the Animal Control Board a little bit more discretion in coming up with creative solutions in order to prevent animals from having to be euthanized.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, not seeing any. Would anyone like a break? We've been going for over 2 hours without a break.
Mayor, I have a question real quickly.
Sure.
If I may. Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that has an issue we could move up versus making these people sit through all these various items? Is there something we could do for them in the audience?
There's a lady in the corner.
Library.
I think Julie probably is the only one.
Oh, yeah, we could move that one up.
Item Q.
Yeah, why don't we do that one, and then we'll take a little break if people need one. So we're going to jump to item Q. Approval of purchase agreement for land owned by Janice Knutson adjacent to Highland Boulevard, and authorization for the mayor and finance officer to sign the same. Have a motion by Rademski and a second by Mantee. And I'll ask the city attorney, Matt Roby, to explain it.
Thank you, Mayor. Janice Knudsen approached the city with having a conversation to discuss the property that she owns. I will say in full transparency here, it was Julie who came forward and she was discussing it with the city, and Janice is her mother-in-law. So that's how the discussion transpired. But essentially, the property that Janice owns is just adjacent to Highland Boulevard. And I don't know if everybody understands where that is. I know, or we can pull it up on the screen here. The purchase price in this purchase agreement is $80,000, payable at closing in cash. I've talked to the title company, and so we're about probably 4 weeks out from closing. And I think that's basically the highlights. I guess I would ask maybe the Public Works Director to maybe touch on the purpose of the city acquiring this land for future use for drainage work, drainage abatement work.
Are you able to share the location with your GIS, Heath?
I'm pulling it up as we speak. It might take a minute here, though.
Okay.
But in brief summary, I give a quick narrative that, yes, this was a timely discussion that Julie was having with the planning staff and looking at potentially selling this property for development. Luckily, the planning staff was well in tune with the recent Highland drainage study that was performed and knew to kind of put Julie on pause there for a little bit to let us look into this, because we have this area of property marked as a result of that Highland Park drainage study for future drainage improvements. And this is adjacent to the Highland Boulevard. And again, I apologize, my map's very slow here pulling up. But this area is a few phases down the line in the recommendations from the Highland drainage study. But anytime there's opportunity like this, take advantage of procuring the property to preserve it for future use. Obviously, we felt that made sense and would agree with the recommendation to go ahead and buy this.
All right. And I have it. I can share my screen if you don't have it up yet, Heath.
No, go ahead, Mayor, please. Thank you.
Do you know did you say the size of the parcels and the purchase price?
It doesn't have to travel very far.
There it is. Okay. The area is highlighted in red, and we have, this is Highland, is this Highland Boulevard, the curved road?
Yes.
Next to the highway, and I'm moving my cursor around, but you can't really see it on the screen there. So it's like two parcels with kind of a bump out in the middle. So are there, let's see, did we get a motion on that? We do have a motion. Any questions or comments from the council about this action? Councilman Albertson?
Thanks, Mayor. Heath, you were going to look into that bump out. Is that property available, or what happens with that? I understand the Knudsen property, but I'm just asking a question, I guess, about that bump out now.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Everson. That we have not researched directly with that landowner. At least I haven't heard personally of any discussions there yet. I don't know, Julie, you haven't had conversations with him either. So that's something we would have to do yet and see if that would be a potential for us to procure that as well.
I believe, though, and Heath can correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was, when we were discussing that it was determined that the potential future use for drainage purposes, in the event that that's not unacquirable, we could still achieve kind of what we're hoping to do there without acquiring that parcel.
Yes, that's correct, Matt. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yes, Councilman Bueller?
Yeah, I'm just going to point that out as well. The road, if we tore that road out, we would have room. But there may be another option where we could offer that landowner or to purchase just a strip of that property across the back, and maybe we don't need to buy it all, I don't know. But another thought.
Right. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll look for action.
Mayor?
Oh, yes, go ahead, Kristen.
Sorry to interrupt. So this purchase was actually not budgeted. So I need to make sure that the council's approving what I'm kind of suggesting, where to come up with the money from. And then I'll probably need the motion to be amended as well.
Okay.
So we do have $250,000 in a restricted kind of land cash account in Fund 212. So that's where my suggestion is that we take it from. And then I would also need authorization to issue a special check because with the title company and stuff, they'll want to payment upon closing.
Okay, so we'll add to the motion to purchase the property from using the restricted land account and to authorize the finance officer to issue a special check. And that was Rademski. Are you okay with that amendment? And Manti? Okay. Those are added.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Any other comments or questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Which ones? Does anyone want a break, or are we good to keep going? Councilman Hoyer?
Well, I was just wondering if maybe we can get the ARPA grant done and then the other one with the 40-hour service, just so we can get these guys
Just
taken
keep
care
rolling?
of. Just to
Okay.
get these guys taken care of, and then maybe we can take a quick break.
Yeah, okay, so that would be item. M, okay, go to. M, okay, we'll start with item M. That's the library one, Dee Dee. Authorization to apply and accept an ARPA grant from the South Dakota State Library in the amount of $60,000 for an RFID project at the Watertown Regional Library. I have a motion by Y and a second by Hoyer. Okay, and our library director, Dee Dee Whitman's here, so Dee Dee, I'll let you explain.
Okay, thank you. It's nice to see you all again. So I'm really excited about this opportunity. In general, it's an excellent opportunity for libraries in all of South Dakota. There's been $2.2 million awarded to South Dakota through the ARPA grant, and so this is our opportunity to apply for a project anywhere between $5,000 and $100,000. Excuse me. So that's the kind of money that is not often available to libraries. So when we were looking into some of the goals of our organization and how they aligned with the South Dakota State Library's goals, technology is at the forefront of a lot of different things that we do. And so this RFID project would actually greatly improve staff time checking materials in and out, also managing our inventory, and then providing a new experience for patrons with a self-checkout kiosk. Right now we do have a self-checkout, but it would not have anywhere near the functionality of this new self-checkout, which allows patrons to not only manage their materials, but also see library maps, see different events going on at the library. So there's a lot of different things going on at that kiosk. Finally, there will also be security gates installed at both doors of the library that will help secure our library materials. And that's done through RFID tags on every single object. And even at 11 cents a piece and 47 cents a piece, when you've got around 130,000 of them, those add up. So if you have any more questions, just let me know.
All right, any questions? Councilman Vilhar?
Dee Dee, I see that there's also annual ongoing costs that won't be a problem for you for the library.
We should be able to budget that into our regular O&M request. I don't foresee that being a problem. Every year, though, we will have to evaluate and see what type of climate that we're in for that. And if there are any adjustments that we would have to make, then we would have to explore those.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilman Bueller?
If you get rid of a book, can you utilize that tag on a different book if you're adding new ones? Or do you just have to buy?
Yeah, you just have to replace it, replace the tag.
Thank
Any other questions or comments? All right, I will look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thank you. I'm actually going to go apply for that right now.
All right. Good job. Sorry it took so long to get there. Okay. Anyone need a break? Are you ready for a break? Oh, we still got another one. Sorry. I keep asking that. Do you think I want a break? I think she does.
I think there's only 3 items left after that. If they're going to be quick, might as well just get done.
No, we can't do that. Okay, we're going to go on to item O. Authorization to authorize Watertown Fire Rescue to extend the current temporary 40-hour firefighter paramedic position until the end of the year, December 31st, 2021. This position is set to expire June 30th, 2021. I have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Manti. And I see the chief and the assistant chief are both here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We will try and get through the 75 slides in a quick hurry. No, thank you for the time. We'll try and be brief. If you have any questions, just stop us right at that slide.
I think everybody's seen this picture tonight a few times and probably seen it on the PO last year when we had that, or 2 years ago, I said, for the Brewski's fire. So these are 2 Spartan fire trucks. They work extremely well in cold weather, so we really outperformed what we thought we could get out of these trucks. Okay, just a little history of what we want to talk about tonight is our staffing plan for our SWOT analysis that we did in 2013 and 2019. What we identified then is we looked at adding 2-person ambulance crew for 12 hours a day as 40-hour employees. And what we did is we identified this working plan since 2014, and in 2016, by 2016, we had 2 of the 4 hires done. And this helped a lot. But we're still kind of trying to get to this goal that we started back in 2014. As you can see, in 2017 through 2020, we were unable to get those through the budget process. Now, kind of what we're looking for tonight is more of a temporary thing. But more importantly, we want to identify those 2 additional staff that we identified back in August of last year. If you guys remember, we talked about adding those positions, and unfortunately with COVID and all the shortfalls with revenue, we had no idea where we were going with this. And in that budget hearing, we went ahead and had a motion by Mr. Holeen and second by Lallam to add a temporary 40-hour position. And during that time frame, we kind of waited until our military guy got back, so we weren't able to identify kind of some standards as far as some of the statistics goes. As far as he didn't get here till April, so we didn't really have a lot of data on the overtime, but we'll share a slide here in a few minutes. So again, on tonight's motion, we're looking to extend this position until 12/31, as the mayor alluded to. So as well as in 2022, we want to look at the budget cycle coming up here in the next few months to continue that 2-position 40-hour firefighters. Again, you've seen this slide in our last year in presentation. We just wanted to show again, in the last 5 years, we've seen a significant increase in ambulance calls, more than 19%. And it continues to grow as we speak in the last few months as well. Our fire calls jumped about 40%, but that was due to a couple things that I'll share here in a couple other slides. This here just illustrates what our ambulance call looks like from midnight to midnight the next night. So in a 24-hour period, we identify where are we finding these ambulance calls. And you can see our graph shows that we really start to jump up from 7 in the morning until 7 at night. But again, at 8 o'clock right here, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, we still have quite a few calls throughout the calendar year that shows that we still have a need even at that point in time at night. This identifies our fire calls that we have from, again, midnight to midnight in a 24-hour period. But again, that 7 a.m. Right here, it shows that we continue to have a pretty good jump there. And that was those 770 ambulance fire calls.
I'd just like to add on that last slide too. Outside of that 12-hour window, the middle of the night. Those are our most dangerous fire calls. It's a lot of residential calls, possibly people, citizens sleeping in and things. So very dangerous calls, the ones in the middle of the night.
Yeah, we had a meeting with the mayor and finance director, and one thing we want to identify, of those 770 calls, why did we have such a big jump in a 2-year period? Well, we changed kind of how we did some processes as far as EMS. As you can see, this big chunk of pie here, that 40+%, that basically represents our emergency medical service calls. That is where we send an engine company to severe critical patients, and that's where we're getting more boots on the ground, and we're seeing better outcomes for our patients as well.
And just one other comment about that one. Those calls for service when we are on EMS, a lot of times that staff is still available to go to a fire call. So.
Okay, so we've shared this slide to you before. The NFPA, National Fire Protection Agency, we have to adhere to these standards. And the 1710 is the standard for initial arriving company. We need to have a fire truck on scene within 4 minutes of any call to 90% of all the calls in our city. And obviously, response times are going to be dictated by our Station 3 once we do go ahead and build that. But as you can see, even with that, we still are able to hit 78% of all calls in our jurisdictional area within that 4-minute response. So we feel pretty good about one engine making it there. But then we move this slide. This is the initial full alarm assignment, meaning how many boots on the ground do we have to have in order to have, number one, a rescue situation or a safe environment for our staff. And as you can see here, this shows one engine company here, a second engine company. So those are 4 staff members. So we have basically 8 people that would need to arrive in that 480 seconds or 8 minutes response, as well as an aerial company with 3 people. And then we also have basically a RIT company. It's called a Rapid Intervention Team, which helps protect and the safety of our staff, as well as a victim search team up here in the corner here. The battalion chief arrives on scene with maybe a safety officer or another safety command staff. So in this basic setting here, Watertown Fire Rescue's never hit this standard in the whole time that I'm aware of, and we've done a lot of data research. This is just something we can't hit. Anything to add on that, Doug? Okay. So how do we ever get to the NFPA 1710 standard? I know that you're all going, that's a lot of money for a lot of staffing. Well, in the past, we have applied for a SAFER grant. It's called Staffing for Adequate Fire Emergency Response. We did receive that back quite a few years ago when the standards of receiving the grant and guidance was a lot different. But they've made some changes over the last year because of COVID and many other things. In this grant now, there's no cost share to the city of Watertown. The grant terms basically provide 3 consecutive years. The 4th year is a responsibility for the city of Watertown. So it pays the salaries as well as benefits for our staff members. There is no cost limits as far as whatever your salary is. There's not a cost limit on that. So again, when we talk about applying for this grant, I've been to numerous workshops at international fire chiefs conventions on the SAFER grant as well as the AFG. And the one thing that I learned from them is in order for us to even come close to receiving this grant, we have to apply for the number of people it takes to get to NFPA 1710. And that means today, in order for us to receive the grant, if we wanted to apply for it now or in the near future for the Station 3 staffing plan, we would actually have to apply for 6 people plus the 2 40-hour positions in order to hit that number. But with that said, we can increase our chance of receiving that grant by 85 to 90%. So there is some a good opportunity there. So when we talk to the chief here and the mayor and the finance director, we want to look at ourselves. How do we compare with other cities? Well, Aberdeen is very close to us in a lot of things, so we thought, well, let's just show this to you guys. They have 49 paramedic firefighters. We have 38 paramedic firefighters. Their coverage area of citizens is 28,225. And you're probably going, well, how is that 28,225? They only do city proper limits. Brown County in general is 35,000 people, but they only coverage those 28,000 people. So as you can see, our coverage area is 28,000 or the greater population of Cottington County. The citizens per firefighter breakdown is 737, 576 as follows. The total expenditures, we want to identify just the expenditures for operating and maintenance and personnel costs. The whole fire department in Aberdeen, the whole fire department in Watertown. As you can see, it's about a $700,000 difference. Revenue is a lot different, obviously, because we do transfers as well as, we have probably a little, I think our costs are relatively the same, Chief, on ambulance costs for ambulance bills. But as you can see, we have a pretty significant dollar amount on the revenue. And their EMS calls are pretty close to ours in Watertown as well. Their fire calls jump just a little bit more.
Don, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Aberdeen, is that are there any volunteers on that fire department at all? Is that number partial volunteer, or is it all city employed?
49 paid paramedic firefighters. They have 15 staff members per shift in a 24-hour period, Bruce, and we have 11.
Why do they have such a higher number of fires? Excuse me.
Well, I can answer that. That's that EMS, the emergency medical services. They go on a lot more non-critical patients, what I call non-critical, like a seizure or a diabetic or something of that nature. They will respond to more of those type of calls than we do. A lot of it's based because we don't have the staff to do that. Okay, some benefits and outcomes if we were to get these two staff. Provide additional ambulance crew for that 12-hour period. So we'd have 2 firefighter paramedics during that 12-hour period. We meet some overall incident objectives from life safety, incident stabilization, and property preservation. We have better outcomes. We know that. We've shown data that shows the critical patients that if we get more boots on the ground, we have a better outcome. And also provides an adequate number of staffing during those numerous concurrent calls. And what I mean by that is multiple ambulance calls that come in within 1 hour of each other, where we have numerous staff out the door with numerous ambulances and apparatuses. Some just more continued outcomes. We can continue to improve the NFP 1710 WFR. Critical safety measures such as structure fires, rescue incidents, and hazmat incidents could be very improved, as well as fire ground and EMS operations on the incidents as well. And we'll also help maintain that ISO Class 2 designation that we received in 2 years ago. These 2 staff will be also part of that long-term Station 3 plan as well for staffing. Now we get to the big part. How do we pay for it? Well, the reduction of overtime is still in process as far as identifying those percentages. But in 2021, today, we have that 1 extra full-time temporary position. We feel that we're going to see a 15 to 20% reduction. Our 22 budgeted overtime that will come about here in the next few months. If we had 2 full-time staff next year, we could see a 30 to 40% reduction. So roughly about $30,000. Our ambulance budgeted revenue is something that we want to share with you tonight. The 2019 and 2020 budgeted revenue, we had about $130,000 more collected than we actually budgeted in our budgeting process. And then the last but not least, the CARES Act. I think you guys are well aware of that one. We basically received 60% of all our ambulance salaries for our staff at Watertown Fire as well last year. Yes.
I want to clarify, back up that last slide. It's your revenue that is over budgeted, not that you're making a profit of $132,000.
That's absolutely correct.
Make sure that is not misconstrued.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And this next slide will show that. This next slide shows exactly what Glenn's alluding to. The orange is identified as our budgeted amount each calendar year for the last 5 years, the orange is. The blue represents above what we thought we were going to get in our budgeted amount. So as you can see, there was what we call a surplus above what we expected in that amount of dollars. So $130,000 respectively in 2019 and 2020. So thank you for sharing that. So last slide here, it just kind of gives you a comparison of ambulance revenue versus expenditures. This is something that Krista and I talked about. The blue represents our actual revenue that we did receive here for the last 5 years. The orange represents the total expenditures for our ambulance budget. And you can see that 2019 to 2020 was a significant jump due to the wage study, or 2019 wage study that was represented in 2020. But one thing I want to show, the overall net city expense due to that surplus that we had of our budgeted revenue, you could see that our costs didn't really go up that much for our ambulance over the years. You could see in 2018 it was $1,491,000. In 2019 it was $1,515,000, and in 2020 it went up $1,522,000. So we had a smaller jump because of those extra revenue dollars that we had as well. So with that, I would open up any comments or questions for you folks.
All right, questions?
Mayor.
Councilman Bueller?
Don, just how much of what we do is in compliance with the NFPA? Is that sort of a guideline for everything that we do at the airport or at the fire department?
We adopted the NFPA codes when it comes to permitting and everything, the 2018 codes. We try to adhere to those NFPA standards of 1710.
And that's not a federal organization, that's a private organization, correct?
That's correct, yes. Yep.
And if we add a couple of more ambulance people, obviously we're going to need more equipment, I would assume. Is that true? Would we need another ambulance?
At this time, no. The 5 ambulances that we have, we would be calling in overtime to meet the needs of that next concurrent call. So these 2 people would be on the ambulance 12 hours a day, and they would run that first due ambulance out the door every day.
Yeah, so what's going on right now is sometimes you'll have enough rigs going out the door and fire trucks and stuff that we'll have an ambulance sitting there that doesn't have a staff, so we don't need any additional ambulances.
So we're good on ambulances.
Councilman Hoyer?
Is 12 hours the standard shift for you guys?
24 hours is our shifts. We do every third day 24-hour shifts for our 11-person staff. So we have an A shift, a B shift, and a C shift, and they do their 24-hour shifts, and they get 48 hours off. During the week, we want to do this 12-hour position, Michael, that would identify those peak hours or for those ambulance calls.
I guess I'm asking a little bit. One, is that standard practice, which I'm guessing it is. But then just the concern with last year with the ambulance that went off the road due to someone falling asleep at the wheel. And I know the dangers of being up for 24 hours because I've done that in operation before. But I just looking out and make one of you guys be safe, and if this helps with that a little bit, then fantastic. But
You're exactly right. It is a safety concern, and so this 12-hour shift, that's our primary ambulance out the door, and it'll take a lot of times the first transfer if there's a second one or whatever. So which it helps us to not send the same crew down the road in a 24-hour period and go to the next one. And so the 24-hour shift workers is set up on a 52-hour work week, and that's 52 hours without any overtime occurring. So it's a good system. It's a very standard system across the country. Probably the 40-hour add-in during busy times is something that's really starting to take a hold across the country as an added resource. So.
Well, then I would just say that I like the sound of adding this on for you guys. Just looking out for your overall safety on that.
Councilwoman Manti?
Couple things they took away from here. First of all, the fact that we really do have some work to do on getting our staffing levels up. But the second is that ISO rating. I don't know if everybody remembers what that does for the community. If you want to just briefly touch on that, and then I have one other comment on the ISO rating.
The Class 2, we're basically one of 1,300 ISO Class 2s in the country. And, I think we had our year-end presentation, and I think Glenn maybe brought it up, Councilman Bellhauer did, about, maintaining that basically. That's really what we want to do. If we maintain it, we could still see, if we went to a Class 3, there's an unfortunate chance of a 15 to 20% increase of insurances throughout the city. And unfortunately, we don't want that to happen to our citizens at this point, so.
Yeah, that was when I wanted people to understand that there's a bigger impact here than just how fast you get to the fire personally. And then the second thing is that I've been on the council now for 8 years, and I have seen the need for those staff people for 8 years. And I really have. I mean, you've added some, and I was glad about that. But we keep going forward, I know that we're getting more spread out as a city. I know we're talking about Fire Station 3, but I guess I just want to go on record as saying that whatever we can do to not only give them the temporary employee we have now, but to get them to that 4 firefighter goal is what we need to do for our community, for the safety. And so if we can start right now thinking about that and making sure they get this, because I really have been watching you guys need staff for almost the whole time I've been on the council. And I think it's really important for us to understand that you've more than patiently waited your turn, if you want to call it that. But I think the bigger thing is safety, community safety, firefighter safety, response times, keeping our ISO rating. I mean, it's a big package. So I think that that's what we all need to consider, both the sitting here now and whoever's going to be on the council after us. So.
Anyone else? All right, so.
Mayor?
Go ahead, Kristen.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor. I feel like I keep interrupting.
No, that's all right. We got to have the finance officer.
Don, did you express how much the extension you would need to have a budget supplement for?
I'm glad you brought that up. We would probably need another $30,000 to $35,000 because it's an annual salary. Kristen is $70,000, correct? For firefighter, paramedic,
Yep.
And we have 35 identified for the first half. We need additional 35 for the second half.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that when we make that motion that that's put in there and then that would be a budget supplement.
Good point.
And tonight we're being asked to add that budget supplement for, maybe I need a break too, budget supplement for that, extending that temporary position till the end of the year. That's what we're being asked to do tonight, besides the, make sure they get 2 more staff people down the road, guys.
That's not on the agenda.
No, I said besides that. I mean, no, is besides the right word? I need a break. Let's do that, but then let's keep in mind that we need to work for that too. Does that make sense better?
Yes.
Okay.
That's more clear. Anyone else? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, everybody.
guys. All right.
Don, do you have the person hired? I'm just asking.
Well, when Chief Crayons retires, we'll have to get another staff member. Yes. So it'll be June 1st when we add another staff member. Yep.
There is a temporary person right now.
Yeah, we currently have a temporary person in the position right now. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we still have a few agenda items, but I'm going to take a 5-minute break. Just try to make it really quick and come right back. Okay, we're coming back from our break here. We are on item K, approval of resolution number 21-23, the replat of Lot 1, Watertown Railroad, second edition to the municipality of Watertown in the county of Cottington, South Dakota. I have a motion by Holeen and a second by Y, and I will ask the Public Works Director, City Engineer Heath Von Eye to tell us about it, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll share my screen as well. This is a copy of the platted area. This is along Bogue Avenue. If the council could recall, this land was part of a land trade agreement with a developer in relation to spurring some downtown redevelopment. And since then, the land went through an admin plat, which is one that's approved administratively by the city engineer after it's reviewed and meets all requirements. And then now subsequent to that, the current owners would like to replat the land into a series of lots all along Bogue Avenue. And so in order to do so, we unfortunately couldn't do an admin plat again. There are restrictions on admin plats and the number that can be performed within a certain amount of time. So this one had to come back through the conventional platting process. So it went through the Planning Commission for approval. They did recommend that approval to the City Council, and it's before the council tonight for your consideration. Again, pretty straightforward plat. They're creating, I believe, 5 lots out of this, out of the land along and adjacent to Bogue Avenue. We've retained all the necessary utility easements, stormwater easements, and we have our detention pond preserved as well, as far as that is concerned.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Mayor?
Yes. Go ahead, Councilman Albertson.
Thank you. Heath, why would that not been able to be done administratively? I mean, I don't have any problem. It took us 2 minutes, but why wasn't that an administrative?
Yeah, great question. The for the explanation, the context there, sorry I didn't touch on that. There is a limitation in the ordinance that allows for administrative plats, but they can only be done once every. I see Brandy's online, or Stacy is actually. I believe it's once every 3 years. Maybe, Mayor, you know that off the top of your head.
I think that's right.
And I think the logic there, Councilman Albertson, is that if somebody admin plats something, I think the theory is we just want to make sure they're sure what they're doing and not just come back flippantly over and over and over again for staff to keep replatting things. It just, I think that's part of the reason why there's a 3-year limit in there. I'd also let Stacy chime in if she had some other idea on the logic behind that.
Yeah, you could go from 1 lot to a proliferation of 50 lots pretty fast if you didn't have a limitation without the council ever finding out about it. No preliminary planning, because admin plats are bare bones. Okay, moving on to item L, approval of Sourcewell contract with Miracle Recreation Equipment, Crouch Recreation, Sourcewell ID number 124807, for the purchase of ADA inclusive playground equipment to also include all surfacing and installation services for the price of $130,312.47.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion by Albertson, a second by Rademski, and I'll ask the Park Rec and Forestry Director, Terry Kelly, to tell us about this.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I'll be pretty brief here. What's before you for approval is the actual equipment, installation, and the surfacing for the new playground, which is inclusive or ADA accessible. This is the playground Councilman Albertson has kind of briefed the council on over the last year or so. So it's becoming fruition, and this is the step to get us into production and get our space in the lot of time for the installers to get here yet this fall. We're anticipating probably mid-August to mid-September install date, and location will be at McKinley Park, adjacent to the traditional playground with sidewalk accessibility between the two and safety surfacing. So a great project that a lot of people have came together to make happen. So With that, I'll look for council action or answer any questions.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone have any questions? We've kind of been hearing about this. It's exciting that we're actually moving forward. Not seeing any questions, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thanks for hanging in there, Terry.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, item N is authorization for the mayor to sign the State Water Resources Management System grant application. And this is connected to the letter that we send every year to the Corps of Engineers saying, yes, we still agree to sponsor a flood control study. We did get a grant from the state to complete that study, and we've extended it. We originally applied in 2015. We got the grant, I think, in 2016. And we extended it once, and now they said we can't extend it anymore. We have to reapply. Unfortunately, the numbers that were used in the grant came from a 2015 study or estimate, and I contacted the Corps who did the numbers and asked if there was any way they could give us updated numbers soon enough to get the application into the state, and they haven't responded. So I simply took a proportion of the consumer price index for today, our current consumer price index, and the consumer price index that was present when the grant was approved, and did a proportion to inflate the numbers. So we're asking for a little bit more. The state may or may not grant us a little bit more, but that's what I did. And so with your authorization, I will apply for the same grant that we received a number of years ago.
So moved.
And we have a motion by Beth Manti and a second by Holene. Any discussion, questions, comments? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. And then we brought item F off of the consent agenda. That is approval of a purchase agreement with Truck Utilities, Inc. for the 2021 wastewater lift truck in the amount of $121,305 with trade-in. I have a motion by Holene and a second by Roby. And I will ask Heath Von Eye, the Public Works Director, to tell us about this.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a wastewater enterprise fund purchase in the 604 account. Mike Berger, wastewater superintendent, had budgeted $164,000 for this purchase. He has worked with the vendor through the, let me check the notes here real quick, Minnesota State bid contracts, who had received a bid award over there under those contracts. And the right truck, the right equipment, the right lift, and the lift capabilities and the ratings for the lift all fit the specs that Mike's looking for. Essentially, what this truck is got the lift, the cable, and the lift on it to pull pumps out of the numerous lift stations that we have throughout town. There's 48, 49 lift stations. Each one of those have pump equipment in them, and that's what this truck is for. Essentially, is to service those lift stations. You'll note the trade-in value on the current piece of machinery seems a little low. I did ask Mike about that. He recognized because the truck is 10 years old, amount of miles and hours that are on it, and this particular unit that we currently have is well known for having engine problems, the type of engine that's in it. So the trade-in value is what it is essentially, and after hearing the logic behind that, Mike and I are in agreement that this would be an appropriate path to go down in procuring the new truck and trading off the old one.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, we are down to old business. Is there any old business, Councilman Rademski?
Yeah, I've got some old business. This happened 35 years ago today. I'd like to wish my sister and brother-in-law, Don and Leslie Kranz, a happy anniversary.
All right, thank you. Happy anniversary. Councilman Hoyer.
Yeah, that one.
That one over there.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, because I don't think we said why everyone can see our faces again. It's been a while, so I don't know if you could address that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The resolution that the council passed is still in place, and it says that all citizens of the city should follow the CDC guidelines. And the CDC guidelines recently changed, so people who are fully vaccinated can be in close proximity, indoors and outdoors, to people without wearing a mask. So that's why we're not wearing masks. Councilman
Quick
Villar?
follow-up to that. I track these numbers on a daily basis. We were at over 600 active cases back in December for COVID. Today, the count was 41. So they've come down dramatically the last few months.
Right, that's a good thing. Councilwoman Manti?
Yeah, just a quick, because it's come up a couple times tonight during the conversation. I was just looking to see, there was a lot of moving parts about the ice arena rink, Reed rink, as far as the borings, the soil borings and things like that, and some of the financials. Do we have any updated ones or new ones, or what can you share with us?
We're actually meeting tomorrow with our finance officer and our owner's representative to talk about finances. The location of the ice arena has moved ever so slightly to the north, and the parking lot will move a little bit more to the south.
Okay, is that from?
That's the plan as far as right now goes.
Okay, and so then as far as like some of the overall cost numbers and stuff, that's what we'll get now with knowing where it's going to be located and some of
Yeah, that's what we're trying to pin down.
Okay, all right.
So
that would
was
be
there
great.
a recommendation from a foundation engineer or soils expert?
You want to take it, Bruce?
Yeah, they've done the borings, and certainly Dick Strasberg of Tegra is following up with this. He feels very comfortable with the people that did the boring and apparently the testing as well. And to Reed's point, it is shifting slightly because of those borings. So we have, we're paying Dick to be our representative, so
Yep.
we feel comfortable with his assessment of that.
Okay, good.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Good to know. Any other old business? Okay, I have some new business. The fireworks on July 3rd, Dan Rattershot of Luz and Tim Sheehan of the Chamber are putting together a plan for fireworks for our community. And they're looking for some council volunteers to assist in the planning process. And if any of you are willing to participate in that, please contact either Dan or Tim. And so that should be exciting. We do have money in our budget to contribute toward that.
That was going to be my question.
Yes.
What do we have?
We have $10,000 for that. So they're figuring out how to use it.
I'll contact Dan.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear. Good. Any other new business? Yes, Councilman Villar?
There was a letter went out from our code enforcement officer. I've got a copy in front of me dated May 3rd concerning the need to mow along the bike paths. I've had quite a few comments about that or questions about that. In fact, I got another one tonight, was texted to me. I don't disagree with I agree with our ordinance. I don't disagree with the tone of the letter whatsoever. It was not threatening. My only concern is I did not realize this was going to be going out. There should have been a better communication made to us as well as to the public in general about that requirement. Because like I say, the first I heard about it was when I started getting calls last week and I have a lot of residents that live around the lake that have a bike path that they have to deal with this. So just a word of caution in the future that, communication is the key on something like this.
There was a news release that went out before the letters, wasn't there, Heath? And it wasn't just the lake. It's all over town.
Was there a
the
news
staff has been working on this since I became mayor. I said to identify all of the locations of private property that we're mowing, and we're not going to mow. I mean, some people mow their own, and other people.
So there was a news release?
Yes.
Yeah, there was, Councilman Vilhauer.
Okay.
And it was a very coordinated effort between the airport manager, the street superintendent, park and rec director, and our code enforcement officer. And so because each of those departments and divisions of Public Works are all mowing certain areas throughout town, it's been a very extensive collaborative effort amongst all of them. And I would apologize, the press release probably could have been, you know, we could have given you a heads up before even submitting that to the public. And then the letters were soon to follow, so there could have been a little bigger gap there too as well.
I'm assuming it's similar to our mowing ordinance in general, that first of all, there is a penalty in our ordinance for not following it, and then follow-up is that if we have to come out as a city and mow it, we're going to charge the homeowner. Is that correct? I'm looking at you, I guess, Matt, in that regard.
Yes, that is correct. And then it ends up getting assessed to the property tax roll if they don't pay it.
Do you know what the penalty is?
I don't believe it's a penalty. Kristen actually might know most about this, but I think it's just that we charge for our.
Okay.
I think we charge a pretty exorbitant amount for our service.
As we
to discourage
we discussed it in the past.
to discourage becoming the town lawnmowers. I think it's Kristen. Is it $125 or something like that?
I think it's just a flat 100 for every time.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Right, so this is just that we've been inadvertently, just from word of mouth, we're kind of upgrading our system of communication from staff that mow, of what they mow and what they shouldn't mow. So it's always been on the books that people have to mow the boulevard, and we just were mowing it for them in some cases, and nobody knew why. Okay. Is there any other new business? Any liaison reports? I do have an announcement to make. The Finance Office received an award. Again, the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to the City of Watertown for its comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2019. And there are only 3 cities in South Dakota that got this award. And so we should be really proud of our staff and the good job that they do. Year after year, we've been getting this award for like 38 years in a row. And the other 2 cities are Sioux Falls and Vermilion. But I told Kristen she got the certificate, and she was supposed to bring it to me so I could award it to her, and she dragged her feet, and here I am. I don't have it. But anyway, I know she's listening, so let's clap for Kristen and her staff. Good job, Finance Department. You do a great job. Okay, are there any other announcements? Okay, we will not be going into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2, and there being no further business, I declare the meeting adjourned. Good night.
Good night, everybody.